started. This lecture is called, is this the chill music? Is the chill music too loud or too soft? Okay. This lecture is called, Is That a Beehive? How Egyptologists Saved Ancient Egyptian Wall Reliefs Through Their Own Artistry. So today we are going to talk about Egyptologists that started their careers as artists. Essentially, in the very early days of Egyptology, photography was still pretty new and was also not as accessible to be able to bring into small tombs or temples. So they needed other things. They needed other ways to record sites that they were going to and exploring. This was also the main way that they did this was via painting, and they were painting and or drawing. Drawing is also something part of this, but their painting was especially important because of the colors in all of these different tombs. Without the colors, you're missing a lot. If you're only doing black and white drawings, you're missing a lot of the nuances of what the ancient Egyptians were doing. I'm gonna go this way. So these paintings have proved very, very important because they are extremely helpful for recording sites that, since those Egyptologists have recorded those sites, may have been subject to vandalism, may have actually been slowly but surely degrading. A lot of these tombs were originally, when explorers / locals would go in these tombs, they would use torches, and a lot of that smoke and soot would completely cover the paintings, and the conservation process is really slow to remove all of that soot. We also know that some of this vandalism could have been done by the Egyptians themselves, whether that is all the way back in ancient Egypt with after the rules of Hatshepsut and Akhenaten, where the pharaohs after them were purposely destroying images of them, images and text. And even Akhenaten himself, he also went through and destroyed stuff from prior to his reign. Then you also get a lot of destruction after the Greco-Roman period, where there were a lot of monks, mostly Christian or Catholic monks, Coptic monks, who took over some of these funerary temples and tombs to use as monasteries. And then finally, we have locals who would live in tombs, and they usually would have their animals live in the tombs with them as well. And again, are really using torchlight. They're not using electricity, and these things are slowly but surely degrading the tombs. But we all know that the most serious damage comes from Napoleonic campaign, when the Western world opened Egypt up, which opened Egypt up to the world, and a lot of Westerners came in and destroyed a lot of stuff, and took sections that then would be placed in museums. So most of these copies of these paintings are called facsimiles. You can either call, and the artists are usually called copyists in this case, but it's very hard to find them because otherwise they are also artists, and we're going to have a whole discussion at the end on whether or not we think these pieces are of art or of copy. So facsimiles were preferred to photography mainly because, again, since early stages, photography was only in black and white, and it couldn't really show the variety and the colors in all of these different wall paintings. Now, there are a couple different ways that the artists would choose to paint these scenes, and we're going to see that some of these artists that we look at have very distinct styles on how they reproduce these. Some scenes, artists would have completely and utterly reproduced it, and they would have also, oh my goodness, raiders! Hello everyone, welcome everybody to the raid! Thank you guys so much. Paleontologizing, how are you doing today? What were you talking about today? Thank you so much, Daisy, for the follow. We are doing a lecture. We just started, so you haven't missed much. Thank you, Claire, for telling me to drink something. Absolutely, thank you. Please take your seats. We're having a lecture. Hello, Slayadoth. How are you? Why did I come upon with that accent? I don't know. Thank you, Conquest Publishing. Thank you so much for following. I love you too, Claire. We are talking about ancient Egyptian art that is reproduced. No, you haven't missed much. We ended up accidentally talking about ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs for literally almost 45 minutes. So we just started. Thank you so much, Calamity Now. Thank you so much, Techno Trollin, for the follows. Welcome. If you all didn't know, my name, I don't know where that accent came from. And thank you so much, Ash Rubber. Thank you so much. Science, hello. Yeah, you missed like very little. My name is MelissainDeNile. I am in denial in more ways than one. I am an Egyptologist and an archaeologist, and I stream Egyptology and archaeology games as well as give lectures. So today I'm giving one of my lectures. We have a whole series. It's called the Beyond the Nile lecture series, where every month I give a lecture about something about ancient Egypt, and then I get a guest to teach us something about either Egypt or anything else. Thank you so much, Bad Mandex, and thank you so much, Alice Mide, for the follow as well. Conquest Publishing, hit me up, please. Please, please, please. We would love ancient Egypt graphic novels. I would love that. That's amazing. But essentially every month we do 2 different lectures. So this is our lecture for the month. We are talking about Egyptologists who started their careers as artists. Now you might look at this picture here, and think that this is an image from an actual tomb wall. It is not. It is actually a painting that an Egyptologist created to help preserve what that tomb wall was looking like at that particular time. And we call those a facsimile. And so a lot of these, we're going to talk about kind of these mass-produced ones, and museums that were kind of hiring these artists to mass-produce these. And then we're going to look at lots of different artists and kind of look at their different styles. And then we're going to end with my favorite 3. There are 3 of my favorites at the very end. Thank you so much, CM, Karlov, and Otterdoit. Thank you so much for the follows as well. I'll let you guys know that our second lecture, Otterdoit, I can't read it. Otterdoit, thank you so much. Yeah, Paleo Artists of Egyptology. I've been having a very tough time giving these people a title because these are Egyptologists, but there are some of these that did move on and do actual archaeological work. We're going to talk about one that you guys everyone has heard. But there are also ones that did nothing else. All they did was the painting. And so do we call them like Egyptological artists? Do we call them Egyptological copyists? Like a lot of copyists tend to be the word that is kind of put on them, but like they only really focused on Egypt. So like, can they be like, it's a whole big deep thing. And essentially, what was I going to say? Oh, the other thing I was going to say, if you are interested, if you like lectures, if you prefer more talking and not me playing games, we are playing a lot of Assassin's Creed Odyssey right now as we are preparing to go and play Assassin's Creed Mirage when it comes out in October. But if you like the lectures, we actually are having a guest lecture on the 29th. We have a lovely person named Caroline Hackett. She is a French historian, and she is actually going to come and tell us all about the savants of Napoleon that went on the Napoleonic campaign in Egypt. I'm actually going to talk a little bit about it now, which ended up being like an Egyptomania and Napoleon themed month. I don't know how that happened, but it's really good. It's gonna be really cool because we're gonna get a kind of French history perspective of the Napoleonic campaign, which I only know the Egyptology side of it. So that is going to be on September 29th. I'm checking my calendar. Yeah, September 29th. We start at 7:30, and then we start the actual lecture portion at 8 o'clock. So thank you all so much for hanging around. Let's get back into it. So, as I was saying, some of these artists would choose to completely recreate these images. and they would restore them is kind of the best word for it. But as you can see here, some artists would not do this. Some artists would essentially show the tomb wall or the temple wall exactly how it was. So that's why the title of this lecture is that a beehive? Because, and I unfortunately don't have a photo of it, but there is a painting of one of the artists that we're going to talk about at the very end of the stream that I had at my university, and there was literally a beehive that was inside the tomb, and this artist painted it. He painted the beehive in the corner of this thing to show that at the time that he was in this tomb, there was a beehive attached to the wall. So those are kind of the two different things. Hello, Smophosaurus, how are you? Welcome. Hi, Alexandra, how are you? How many were commercial artists versus hobbies? Very good question. The vast majority of them were hired. We're going to talk about that in a second, but many of them were hired to do this work. But many of them would start this as a hobby, and then would become this. Thank you, Nat, also for that Patreon shout out. If you are interested in more Egyptology knowledge, I am doing Patreon courses. It's going to probably be every other month. Next month, October, is going to be our first course, and we are going to talk about ancient Egyptian art. And you're very welcome. I am very bad at remembering that I turned it on, but I did turn it on today, so thank you. I will try to find photographs that I will show you guys as well. It's going to be hard because a lot of these are on tombs that might not exist anymore, but we're gonna find some stuff, I'm sure. I didn't have time to put them in the presentation, but essentially, as we go through these, some of them we're gonna go and look and try to see if we can find them. But some of them are gonna be easy, some of them are gonna be very difficult to find, because they could be one very, very small section and a huge tomb. What was the other thing? So there is not really a study of any of these paintings. I have found very little scholarly research or scholarly maybe appreciation for these paintings, and I love these. These are kind of one of my very big interests. I was telling this the other day, I really love paintings of ruins. So there are tons of images of people that are going around Europe and they see a ruined castle and they'll paint it, and those things are super interesting to me because it is essentially a photo of that time period and what that ruin looked like at that time. And so then you can sometimes even find where it is and you can see the differences on how it was well preserved. And it's almost like a snapshot of it in history but as a painting. So, I think a lot of these people are not really appreciated as Egyptologists. The ones that did not continue on to do actual excavation work or actual scholarly work, I don't think they are very underappreciated, so much so that as we're going to go through here, there are going to be a few people that I have absolutely no bio about. I have no information on who they are. I have no years that they died. I have nothing that I could find quickly. And these people, I think, have unfortunately kind of faded into the background except for their name, and it really upsets me. And so we're going to look at some of them, and then at the end I'm going to talk about the most famous ones that I know a lot about. But the first thing that we are going to talk about is the Napoleonic campaign. And if you come on the 29th, you're going to get a very big, huge, more detailed thing with this. Yes, snapshots of history are very interesting, especially so Slayer, you might really like something called historiography. So historiography is the study of history, and it's looking at how historians have studied history over time and knowing their biases and knowing the situation that they lived in and the time that they lived in and understanding that. So if you read the old James Bond books and you see all of those things, you are really liking how history has changed over time and stuff. So it's a lot of different stuff that, oh my god, that otter is so cute. But yeah, the historiography of things is another huge interest of mine. So I'm going to give you some of the basics of what the Napoleonic campaign are, but I'm not going to give any of the military or any of the horrible things that Napoleon did at this point, because I only know the Egyptology side of it. But this is a picture of, or this is a painting of the Battle of, I think this is, now I can't remember which one is this, if this is the Battle of the, I think this is the Battle of the Pyramids, because there literally was a Battle of the Pyramids, and you can see the pyramids on the back. What's your dumb question? Go for it, as I find where I am in my notes. Not Waterloo, no. There's both the Battle of the Nile and the Battle of the Pyramids, and that's the part that I can't remember. I'm just going to assume, because the pyramids are right here, that this is the Battle of the Pyramids. But in the basics is that essentially the Napoleonic campaign was Napoleon taking over the Ottomans, I believe. Is it true that one of the factors influencing? Yeah, absolutely. Egypt was a huge middle ground, because if you could control Egypt, you could control the Red Sea, which is a shortcut to India. So yeah, absolutely. I'm not 100% unsure on that, but I am going to very strongly say yeah. Egypt, because of the Red Sea, so the Sinai Peninsula didn't exist until after until British occupation, so it still was a little bit difficult to get through, but it was easier, and the Ottomans were here, and so yeah, it was definitely about, the British and the French hated each other during this time period. They still kind of do, but so essentially after the military portion of the Napoleonic campaign, of Napoleon taking over Egypt, then you get essentially these group of what they are called savants, and they are kind of experts in their field, but also a lot of them are students. So experts in their field, but a lot of these kids are literally kind of kids getting pulled out of huge French institutions and being pulled essentially to go to Egypt to learn, to essentially learn and record what they're finding. So they, after I think 3 years of this campaign, they write the book in the bottom, which is the description of Egypt, and it is a series of publications from 1809 to 1829, and it was aimed to catalog all known aspects of both ancient and modern Egypt, as well as its natural history. Thank you so much, the Okami Kuma. Oh, and thank you so much, Sis Admin. I missed yours. Thank you so much for the follow. Absolutely, yeah. It's I don't know why they use the word savants, but that's always the word that is used to describe these guys. But it's a weird word. I don't really like. I like to use explorers or experts or something, because they are kind of wild. So there were about 160 civilian scholars and scientists who went to Egypt in between 1798 and 1801. So this photo at the bottom, with a list of savants, I just went to a recent lecture about this, and I took this photo of the slide, of what they have. So this was what the savants were labeled as. So we have the mathematicians, we have the chemists, we have the astronomers, writers, economists, former Knight of Malta, only 2 archaeologists, which is wild to me. Yeah, 7 surgeons, printers' wives. I didn't know there were any women that went on this, and I'm hoping that Caroline is going to talk about more in detail about these people. Yes, they discovered the Rosetta Stone, and they sent it back. They didn't really study it themselves. Again, remember, this is prior to any knowledge on how hieroglyphs are created. But the Napoleon savants found the Rosetta Stone, brought it back, and then Champollion, I'm trying to think if Champollion was a savant. I don't think he was. I don't think he went to Egypt. I think he was too young. I think he's kind of like of the next generation of people. I don't think he wrote for the description of Egypt. I can't remember, but I don't think he did. That is a good question. It actually might have... Oh, actually, it says up there, Charlie's Dragon said, a learned man, noun, use of adjective savant for learned or knowing. So Kennedy, I think what Charlie's Dragon just posted just above, I think that is I think savant is to learn. Yeah, former Knight of Malta. Skilled expert, yeah. And savant also sounds like a verb. It could be a verb, so it could mean to learn. Because I know very little French, but I think that is possible. Jacques Cousteau's crew, yeah, honestly, that's around, isn't that the same time period? I'm not familiar with Jacques Cousteau as much, but you can kind of see this. Powder makers, like, so Polytechnic students was a huge group of these guys. There's 13 of them according to this list, but a lot of these were coming from a polytechnic, a university, which essentially is like an engineering, lots of different stuff, learned person. Yeah. So yeah, that's what a savant means essentially. These are quite literally, the vast majority of these are really young. And we're going to talk about one of them. They were really young and they were pulled from university to go on this almost kind of secret mission to Egypt to kind of just record everything they could find. So 8 of these people are listed as artists, but we'll have to actually see if these ones are. So let's look at one of the first ones. So the lecture that I went to focused on this guy, so I do happen to know a lot about this guy at the moment. So this is Edmond Francois Jamard. He was a French cartographer, meaning maps, engineer, and archaeologist. He was born in 1777. Oh yeah, so Jacques Cousteau is much later, but does sound similar for sure. So he was born in 1777 and died in 1862. So when he was just 21, he had just graduated from the Polytechnic School in France, and then he was about to enroll in the Engineering and Geography School in Paris. And then an advisor to Napoleon asked Jamard if he wanted to participate in an overseas adventure to an undisclosed location, which was absolutely hysterical that I found out this knowledge. And he was like, oh yeah, I like the secrecy, let's go. So he went to Egypt for 3 years. Yeah, that's what I thought Jacques Cousteau was. I hate to say it, I get mixed up with Jacques Clouseau, who is the Pink Panther detective and really stupid. But I do know the difference. I just thought about it. So Polytechnic students, there were 13. So I'm going to assume that he was under that and not artist, mainly because of what I'm going to tell you guys now. I'm pretty sure he was under Polytechnic student. Granted, he was also a cartographer. So is map maker on here? Surveyor. He might be under surveyor or civil engineer as well. Thank you so much, Conquest Publishing. So welcome to the Discord. Yeah, so a large number in comparison. Many of these are surveyors, civil engineers, and polytechnic students, and printers. Those were like some of the biggest numbers of people to go. Right in the middle there is the published Description de Egypt. And I actually have a recopy of it. You can also find all the images on Wikipedia. We might pull them up in a second because I didn't realize that they were so, things. I'm so sorry. That was an ad. Does anyone need me to repeat anything? I was not paying attention. But there's a map also of, I think of Egypt, of something. I can't read what it says. Oh no, it says Saqqara. This is a map of somewhere near Saqqara. Yes. Yeah, Polytechnic, well, you gotta also remember, university was pretty rare to go to, and this is a huge time period for, that we're getting almost, so he was born in 1777, so if you know American history, that's right after, or that is still in the middle of the Revolutionary War. He's 21, so we're talking 1780s. We're now getting to a time where we're almost getting to like more industry and kind of a huge time for learning and like expansion of like intellect and but specifically with like machines, kind of like we're kind of getting to this very like huge, like, I mean, we're not there yet, obviously, but like Industrial Revolution kind of stuff is like, well, no, Industrial Revolution is, never mind. Ignore that. Scratch that. But yeah, there weren't a lot of schools. But this would have been something that they needed to do because they were also like laying down railroad. They were like trying to make easier ways to get through Egypt. Like this is one of the last places that like was really, really conquered. Like we're still in a full colonialist time period where like things are just being conquered and you need people who are going to be able to survey your land that you now own, how you're supposed to traverse in that area, how you're supposed to survive, and you need a lot of stuff working for you at the same time. So he was in Egypt for 3 years. Yeah, exactly. So he was in Egypt for 3 years, and when he returned, he actually became in charge of, he became the editor for the description to Egypt because, what happened? The first 2 editors had died. So he becomes the new editor for the description of Egypt and was pretty influential in, I think, completing many of the later volumes. So, again, this is the first many Westerners had ever been to Egypt or had been anywhere in possibly sometimes the Middle East. So this is not the good paintings that we're going to look at. These are the bad paintings. But this is the start of it. You always need to start somewhere, and this is where you start. So the art of copying was absolutely not perfected. They had absolutely no knowledge of hieroglyphs. Don't forget that. They had no idea. They knew it was a writing system. They had no idea how to read it. It took another, I think it took another 20 years to figure it out. Because we just had the 200th anniversary, which would have been 1822 is when Champollion, I think, did it. Somewhere around there. It took another 20 years or so to figure it out. 10 to 20 years to figure this out. And essentially, they couldn't translate anything. They couldn't use those translations to figure out what was actually going on in the image, in the scenes. So they were seeing creatures that also didn't understand, and that they might have been looking at it through their Western lens. So on the left here is the image that Edmond Francois Jamard drew of an image in Ramses, which number is it? The 6th, in Ramses the 6th tomb. And on the right is what that image actually looks like, especially what it looks like today. So as you can see, he did not follow the way that we will see later, where these artists are showing where there is wear and tear on the wall, or where there are cracks, or he's not doing that. He also gave up writing half the hieroglyphs. As you can see, there are tons of just empty lines. He drew the lines, he didn't draw any of the hieroglyphs. He gave up pretty much. He just completely gave up doing a lot of this. But the wildest thing, though, is that this image on the left, after he drew it and then brought it back to Europe, became absolutely famous. And there are so many deep articles about Western people arguing what is going on in this image. The lecture that I went to was all about this image and all about the historiography of how people have studied this image, and how, based off of the drawing that Jamard put, how people have completely and utterly misconstrued what this image actually was. So there are lots of differences. One of the main ones is this, which I think, do I have the zoomed in version? I might not have it on the slide, but I might have to look it up. Here we go. This is, again, a picture from the lecture that I went to. This is what he drew. He drew these little man-headed birds with a giant wing on the back of them. This might have been influenced both on possibly his knowledge of angels, or this looks very similar to a ba bird, a part of an Egyptian soul that is a little bird with a human face, but the wing doesn't make any sense. But you can look very distinctly at what the actual image is, and this is actually it upside down. It's actually a heart beast head. It's just a head of a weird donkey thing, but they're upside down. And so he literally didn't even try. You can tell he did not try. Granted, he's in a dark tomb. He's probably only having a literal like torch. But yeah, there's a lot of different things. So what I'm gonna throw back to the other ones. So this tomb, because again, you couldn't read the cartouche, you couldn't read anything. They called this the Catacomb of Metempsychosis, which you can see up there. Because they believed that this image was showing reincarnation. And this literally influenced a lot of early, and we're talking early Egyptologists into believing that the ancient Egyptians believed in reincarnation, which is not true. Yeah, it's definitely the poor lighting and the conditions and just not understanding what is going on in the wall, but he also was not doing this accurately. Because if this is what the tomb wall looks like now, like, you can see that these are not little humans with things. So it's like, it's kind of back and forth for me that, like, probably the conditions, but also probably he just maybe didn't care to get it perfect. Because granted, this wasn't his job. I don't think he was hired here to come as an artist. He did not go to art school, which you'll see a lot of these guys that we're going to talk about in the future did go to art school. So they thought this was reincarnation because all these different people were coming up to the scale and to Osiris, which they did understand that this was obviously Osiris. But then they thought that this pig here was the human being reincarnated, and essentially he did something bad in his life, so now he's being turned into a pig. Now, granted, I loved this presentation for a lot of reasons because I had never seen this before. I really liked learning about the savants. I really liked this. This guy never once explained what the scene actually is. It is a pig on a boat. Yes, it is a pig on a boat with two little monkeys with whips, pretty much. The big thing is that he never explained what this actually is. He said it's from a specific chapter of the Book of the Dead. That's all he said. And that was like the big problem with me with this lecture, to be honest, because it's not even the Book of the Dead. I think he said the Book of Gates, which I understand as a different version of the Book of the Dead, but nobody else in that audience would have understood, because I knew that this was at the National Gallery of Art in DC, which has 0 Egyptian pieces. It is a modern art museum. Not a modern, but like in comparison to ancient Egypt, it is a modern art museum. The audience was completely unprepared for how detailed and specific this lecture was. And so he said, it's just actually, I think it was the Book of Hours. I have to find my notebook. I don't remember what, I wrote it down before. I think it's actually from the Book of Hours, which again, is just another version of the Book of the Dead, is just another cheat sheet for an ancient Egyptian person to be able to go through the afterlife and be able to go learn and such. But yeah, he didn't explain it, and it was really annoying to me. But it is not a reincarnation scene. The pig thing is completely separate, and I hate to say it, if they could know what the text would say, it would have explained everything, pretty much. That's what the text here explains. So this is just a completely separate scene that has nothing really to do with any of the guys walking up here. No. They do not. Pigs, and this is not even a pig, this is kind of a boar. He's kind of hairy. But no. Absolutely not. And that's why this doesn't make any sense to me. I'm sure he's supposed to be one of the, like, demons or, like, creatures that you meet in the afterlife that you have to pass by. I wish I could tell you guys the actual answer to this, because I don't know, because he did not tell us. But yeah, so this is kind of the confusing thing. I don't think so. In the actual painting, it does not look like his little thing is touching the pig, even though you're right, Jamard made them touch. I think there is a slight gap. It's very hard to see, but you can see this image if you look up the tomb of Ramses VI on the Theban mapping project, that you'll get this image, and you can zoom in on it a little bit. But yeah, that's the really big confusion with Jamard. Desert Rose Gaming, hello, welcome to the stream. We are doing a lecture. We're talking about ancient Egyptian. No, why did I keep saying that? We're talking about Egyptologists who started their careers as artists, and talking about the woes and I don't know. I can't think of the opposite of woes. Woes and praises of these paintings that they created to kind of help preserve ancient Egyptian images. So we're kind of just started. We haven't gotten to the juicy stuff. We're just talking about guys who don't know what they're talking about, pretty much. So the next one I want to talk about is MelissainDeNile. He is another, honestly, I mean, it's not done as much anymore, but like, I don't see a problem with becoming, I've kind of dubbed them Egyptological artists, because a lot of these, it's kind of the whole thing is that a lot of the people we're going to talk about later, not these guys are savants of Napoleon, they kind of don't count, but a lot of the people we talk about later, some of them did go on to become archaeologists, and then some of them only did paintings. And so it's like, what do we call the people who just did paintings? And so I've kind of gone with either Egyptological copyists or Egyptological artists is kind of the best way that I can describe it. Egyptolardi. I love that, Gary. Egyptology. We're gonna go with that. So, I have no idea. He might, Slayer. You might have to look up his genealogical. I didn't even know there was an entertainment company called Denon. Denon? No. I had no idea. Okay. But yeah, so MelissainDeNile had a little bit different path than, Edmond Francois Jamard. He was a French artist, writer, diplomat, author, and archaeologist. So he had this more archaeologist side, this more history side, and art side than Jamard did. So we credit Jamard for what he did, but he's not an artist. But Vivant was born in 1747 and died in 1825, and he was a diplomat under Kings Louis the, me trying to read Roman numerals, 15th and 16th. Oh no, Denon is Japanese. Yeah, then probably not. So when he was a diplomat underneath these two French kings, he was actually in charge of the collection of medals and gems for Madame de Pompadour, who was the king's mistress and also a very famous character in Doctor Who, which I just loved that fact that I found out about that. So he was invited to Egypt to be part of the art and literature section of the savants. So I assume that he would have been under artists on that list. So he made lots of sketches of monuments and art, and he published his own book called Journey in Lower and Upper Egypt, which sparked an Egyptian revival in architecture and decorative arts, both in France and elsewhere. He was one of the first artists who depicted the temples of Thebes, Esna, Edfu, and Philae. Philae is here at the bottom, and I think the one at the above is Esna. Because it's definitely not Thebes. Oh, it might be Edfu. It's either Esna or Edfu. I love Egyptian revival jewelry. I've been wanting some vintage pieces for a while. But yeah, he was kind of, and granted, the Napoleonic campaign in general was probably the first, as I call, Egyptomania wave with Egyptian revival things, and obviously this was because it opened up Egypt to the Western world. So it is when that first wave kind of started. So one of the images that he actually did was this, which is called the Colossus of Memnon at the time. Memnon, if you know, is actually I believe a Greek heroic figure. Like he's just kind of this, like, he's a hero in something, and I think one of the legends or something. And so when they found these two huge, and I mean these are massive, the scale, you cannot tell the scale of these are absolutely huge. When they found these two statues, they thought it was supposed to be the heroic Memnon, but it is Amenhotep III. And so these are remnants of Amenhotep III's mortuary temple. And so you can see the image that he drew and then an image of them in modern day, which is pretty cool. Where am I next? Oh, this is also super fun. So this is also a plate. I don't know if oh, thank you. Greek mythology, Memnon was a king of Ethiopia and was a son of Thytonus and Eos, were considered to be almost Achilles' equal in skill. Yeah. So exactly, like so essentially they knew that Ethiopia, so they knew it was somewhere in Africa, and so they thought that this was Memnon. So we still call them the Colossus of Memnon, even though they are the Colossus of Amenhotep III. So this plate is probably one of the most interesting random facts that we're just going to throw in here. I don't know. I believe this is in his Wikipedia, so I believe that the image in the middle is supposed to be Vivant's image of the Colossus of Memnon, maybe just slightly altered. But the plate itself was made in a 72-piece table set that had different scenes of Egypt. All of these were commissioned by Napoleon to gift to Josephine, which, if you guys know anything about Napoleon, was his wife. But apparently when he gifted this to her, she was going to be his soon-to-be ex-wife, so that he could marry somebody else. And then Josephine outright rejected this 72-piece table set with tons of images of Egypt. And oh my god, how I would love to have one of these pieces. But yeah, I thought that was very, very funny. And it's very interesting. You can see the edges are a scarab and then a vulture back and forth. But they are a little, and then like an Egyptian boat with like a sun disk. But they're a little wonky. They're not really exactly. Bonaparte wished to establish French pressure in the Middle East. He will establish relations with the Indian princess. Yeah. That makes sense. They all just want, they all want to take out the English. I mean, it makes sense. But the English and French really, I mean, this is probably one of the biggest, well, no, there are earlier. This is one of the most recent huge hatreds of Britain and France. So there are tons more men within this very early category of people who are making drawings very similar to these that I don't really call Egyptian copyists. This is not exactly what I mean by these Egyptological artists, but I wanted to throw these out first because they just go show you the basis of art and artists going to Egypt to record sites pretty as accurately as they pretty much could. It does, it's called a follicula, or no, that's not a follicula. Well, it's a very common, we call it a, oh my gosh, it's not a barge, it's called, dang it, what's the word? We use a word in Egyptology to describe the boat. It's the royal bark, thank you. Thank you, Desert Gaming. Yeah, bark. I was like, it's a word that whenever I say it, people get really confused. But yes, it's called a royal bark. So it's definitely modeled after images of royal barks that you would see, that they would put essentially the cult statue on top of the bark, and then they would, it is type of boat, I know, but not a lot of people know it outside of Egypt. I did not know of it outside of Egyptology, but yes, thank you. I do know it is it is technically a boat, but it is, I've never heard anyone use that word outside of Egyptology. But thank you, Charlie and Desert Rose Gaming. But yeah, it's an Egyptian bark that they have the sun disk sitting on. I vaguely know it is a boat through. That's also true. You might have heard, yeah, through some games. Yeah, it's so weird, and the weird thing is that you write it with the RQUE, but like when I say it, people are like, "What do you mean?" And I'm like, "Yeah, not a bark, not a bark with a K, a bark with a QUE," which then confuses us even more. See, like, look at that. A bark is typically with 3 masts, which is not, yeah, tree bark. Yeah, that's the part that gets, or bark like a dog, the sound a dog makes and stuff. It's just a word that has too many meanings. But yeah, a bark with 3 masts, that's not how ancient Egyptian, well, typically we call that one a bark and we call other ones ships. I don't think, and bark a bark, yeah. I don't know if we call the giant big sailing ships that we see in Egypt, if we call those barks, because those might have 3 masts. I don't know. But yeah, it's very odd. So a lot of these images are just kind of the landscapes, but what we're now going to look into are the people who are specifically looking at Egyptian images and copying them for scientific purposes. These are kind of semi-scientific, but not really. Oh, French word as Egyptian were first translated by Jean-François Champollion, which makes sense. That is so French. Yeah, barks, yeah. Bark has to have a square rigging. Ah, very interesting. Yeah, that's so. Yeah, maybe a bark is only a boat that is taking you to the afterlife. Maybe we call ship something else. Alexandria Artifact with our ship fact. Ship fact. Hi Frizz, how are you? Welcome to the lecture. Let's go to the next person we're going to talk about. Oh, that's what we're going to talk about. So, essentially, we get to the early 1900s. We jump another 1,000 years almost. Almost 1,000 years. I am doing very well. I'm enjoying this lecture. I'm a little tired. I had a long day at work. I forgot to mention, you guys, that our register at work stopped working halfway through the day, and I was the main person that had to talk to IT, and it's very exhausting because no one was understanding what was going on. Yes, we're jumping. Yes, we were talking about the Napoleonic campaign, which is the very 1790s to 18 teens, and now we're going to 1900s. So we're jumping a little bit. I can disembark my bark. Yes. So this is kind of when, obviously by this point we've jumped 1,000 years, we've jumped a lot of really bad Egyptology with people literally ripping things out of Egypt, taking things out of Egypt because they think they can. And this is still happening obviously in the 1900s, and it's still happening now. But so much Egypt. Well, Frizz, if you haven't heard, I have a Patreon now, and I am doing a course starting next month on ancient Egyptian art, and where everyone then on Patreon is going to be able to pick courses and such. So, plugging my Patreon courses because I haven't started working on it yet, but I already have a lot of it done though, so but I haven't started extensively working on it for Patreon itself. I got too much to do, guys. Got too much to do. So now we're getting to the part where Egyptology is becoming slightly more a science. Archaeology is in its also very baby heyday. Only when it comes to Egyptology, one of the first archaeologists that I will properly call an archaeologist is Flinders Petrie, and he is excavating in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And essentially he is doing one thing very differently, is he is being very systematic for the most part. In comparison to earlier archaeologists, he is really trying to systematically and scientifically excavate. And he is also really good with artifacts and being able to help properly date them, when before it was kind of a finding frenzy of just like finding anything you can and just showing it. It's more about filling art museums than learning about ancient Egypt. So Flinders Petrie was kind of one of those first. We kind of call him the father of Egyptology in some words. So now we're getting into a time where it's getting a little bit more scientific. There are still some people throwing shit around, and we're not happy about them, but then there are some archaeologists that are being a little bit more proper. The Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York already were getting some Egyptology artifacts, but they were forming excavation teams, and they were going out to Egypt and excavating. The way that excavation works at this time, essentially you would get permits to work in particular areas from the Egyptian government. I'm trying to think of the timeline. I think by the early 1900s, Egyptians themselves were mostly in charge of... No, I don't think they are. No, I think at this time, the French and British are still in charge of antiquities, but then when you go a little bit later, then the Egyptians take over. The British essentially pulls back a little bit, and they only focus on military, and they let Egyptians work in any other things. Um, you had to pay for the permit. So yeah, you had to be a little bit rich, and you had to be able to fund, somebody who owned the permit had to be able to fund the excavation. So we're going to talk about Howard Carter in a little bit, but Howard Carter himself did not own the permit to excavate the Valley of the Kings. Lord Carnarvon, who was his financier, who had no knowledge of Egyptology really, was just a person who was interested in it. He owned the permit to excavate the Valley of the Kings and hired Howard Carter to be the archaeologist. So yeah, it was mostly, well, it wasn't military. It was really, it's kind of, I have a whole timeline of this somewhere that I just can't remember at the moment, but British rule, that's the weird part about that I'll finish up, that the French ruled Egypt for only such a short amount of time, because then the British came in and took and punched them out again. And they ruled over Egypt for a very, very long time. And that's why the Rosetta Stone is in Britain and not in France, because the Rosetta Stone was found by the French but was confiscated by the English. And so both French and, depending on their skill level and depending on the time period, French or English men were deemed the head of antiquities. Gaston Maspero, he was one for a while, even though the country itself is still ruled by the British. Eventually then you get, and I wish I need to look up the date for this, but eventually the British kind of sign this, it's not a succession, but essentially they take a step back and they are only really focused on military and like trade and like the economic side of it, but they essentially elect Egyptians. I think this is when you get the Ishams. So essentially people are then placed in positions of power in the antiquities firm and other kind of more social parts of the government. And so it's still, they didn't really remove themselves until super, super recently. But when you had to get this permit, and then there were different inspectors that were essentially in charge of certain areas. So Howard Carter, at one point, he was an inspector for the area of Giza. And those positions are still almost sometimes used. Even Zahia Was, in his early career, he was the inspector of a certain area. And these are archaeologists that essentially would watch over and make sure that the people who are running the permits were doing it well and doing it right. So that was a long way to explain that whole thing. So a lot of museums had excavation teams. So the two big American ones were three. There are more, but the three big ones from this time period are the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City, the Brooklyn Museum in Brooklyn, New York, and the MFA in Boston, the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. They all had their Egyptologists in their art department. Their curators were also archaeologists, and so they often would go out and do excavations. Some of these museums do still do things like that, but it is very rare in comparison to how much they were doing. And so this is one of the things that I talk about when I talk about the items that are in those three museums, and there are more, but these three are ones in particular that I know a lot about. A very large majority of the actual artifacts that are in these museums were properly excavated by Egyptologists, and then the agreement at the end of the dig season was that you would split the finds between Egypt and between the party that excavated them. So a lot of the items that are in the Met and that are in the Brooklyn Museum and the MFA in Boston are properly excavated artifacts that were then given to the museums by Egypt, because Egypt took half of them. Is that still right? No. It's not very ethical, it's not very moral, but I will say it's not very ethical and moral because essentially the people that were letting them do this were not even really the modern Egyptians that were living there. That's kind of why it's a little fishy. But these are not distinctly stolen. There are still items in those museums that were, prior to that point, that were taken from somebody around. Yes. That's the whole thing. It's like the other items that are in these museums are earlier people from like the 1800s who would go to Egypt, purchase something from a modern Egyptian who might have looted it, and then taking it over to Egypt. And we don't know the context. We don't know anything about where this object is coming from. Full mummies. We have no idea where they were, what tomb that they were found in. At least the ones that were doing this process, we know where they were found, and we have good excavation records to tell us where they were found, to teach us about that person, to teach us about that time period, blah, 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 blah. But yeah, stolen, no. Morally and ethically taken, yes. More, you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, that's just kind of, I always kind of want to make that gist, because there are definitely museums that have taken a lot of stuff or have had things smuggled in illegally, but there are also museums that have technically gotten them legally. So don't just say everything has been stolen. It's not. Because I use the more formal version of stolen. Little or no context. Yeah, exactly. Things that were taken for art value, or for appraisal value rather than archaeological value, which is all based on how much it can tell, how much information it can tell us about it. So, when these universities and or museums were going out and doing excavations, again, photography is not really a thing yet. They would bring artists with them to help record their sites. So the Met itself created an entire wing of their excavation team called the graphic section. And the graphic section hired artists to go to Egypt with excavation teams and create paintings. A lot of these paintings were then brought back and put on display in the Met. And there was one gallery, I was trying to find a photo for y'all. There's one gallery, it's where the bathrooms are, or close to the bathrooms. There's one gallery that is just full of these facsimiles. They are all over the walls and nobody is looking at them. Everyone's just sitting down there casually waiting. And nobody knows that these are these beautiful paintings that are created by people from the graphic section at the Met. So it was created in 1907 by Albert M. Lithgow, who was working for the Metropolitan Museum of Art at the time. And essentially this was mainly done to both preserve and record the site, but also so that they could bring parts of something that they have discovered to the museum that they otherwise wouldn't have been able to take with them. So it was literally about showing people in America what actually the tombs looked like. So a lot of these were hired so that they could literally just decorate museum walls as well. It's kind of a double-edged sword. So this piece here is actually made by multiple artists, many of which I'm going to talk about today, but multiple artists kind of came together to show this painting. And you can see at the bottom that they showed what's on the wall. Like this is still the rest of the painting, and they showed that, oh, this line is going down there and it's a little wonky, and oh, well, you know what? Somebody carved out this poor dude's face and this lady's face. Oh, or it's just chipped off, and oh, look, oh, actually, no, these are 100% carved off. Sorry. I just realized these are both these are both animals, and someone 100% just chopped them right out of the image, which is unfortunate. But yeah, showing everything around here. So pretty much the rest of this lecture is I've pretty much gone through the Met's facsimile collection and picked out some people, and then I tried to research them as best as I could, and so we're just going to look at a lot of their paintings. I have a ton of the links for these and the Met in the PowerPoint, so if anybody has any questions about a specific image, let me know and we can go to the Met's website and look at it. Typically these facsimiles on the Met's website do not describe what is actually going on, but at the least they're going to tell me what tomb it is, and we can look it up and try to see if you have any questions about like what's going on. Yeah, exactly. Casts of fossils so that you can show them to the public. Absolutely. That's exactly what these are. So yeah, so 4 different artists made this one painting here. So yeah, so we're gonna, there are definitely more that we're gonna talk about, and I'm gonna talk about a lot of them, but some of them, again, I have no bio for them. I have no information, but we're gonna look at some of the paintings that I have. And I know that there was a similar group of men and women who worked at the MFA in Boston, but I couldn't really find them except for one, which is the one that I knew about prior to doing all this research. So we'll talk about him, but I know there are more. There are more out there. So let's look at the first one. And again, a lot of them I can't even find photos of them. So I got the name. They would not draw a scale on these. That's a very good question. They wouldn't usually draw a scale, so sometimes it is hard to know how big a scene actually would be. This one is huge, if I remember correctly. This would be a whole wall, if I think so. But typically, I don't think they would. I'd have to see if the Met's website described the scale. They might be able to nowadays know what size the original thing was and how much they're scaled it down, but I'm not sure. It's a very, very good question. So I gotta take a drink of water. So Charles Curly Wilkinson was an American archaeologist and a museum curator. He joined the graphics section of the Met in 1920, and he excavated in both Egypt and the Near East. Mainly, he excavated for the Met from 1956 to 1963. He was a curator at the Met from 1956 to 1963 and at the Brooklyn Museum from 1970 to 1974. So he actually did write a book called Egyptian Wall Paintings, the Met's Collection of Facsimiles, which is free online. And unfortunately, many of them are not in color, the photos of them. But there's a ton of information in that book, and it is free online on the Met's website. So I might pull that one up later and we can look through some more images. But here we have one of the images, and you can see obviously his style was to show the giant gap that is there. But definitely, I mean, had amazing colors. And this is like, I feel like this is a king list, which is very interesting to see. But it's obviously different cartouches of different kings with two priests looking on in a battle scene. And I actually have to look this one up because I'm just noticing something interesting. Let's look this one up. So this is a festival scene from the tomb of Amen-Mos from the Ramesside period. So yeah, we do get the scale of how big this, so the scale is 1:1. That's a very paranoid. I got your answer to it. Yes, we are, absolutely. But yeah, so it says it's a scale on 1:1 of the image. And you can see that it's painted at Kurna by Charles K. Wilkinson for the expedition. Is this just a... Yes, this is just a zoomed in image of stick fighters. What is this? I'm learning very new things today. Sorry. We're gonna pause for the ad. Let's zoom in. So what I'm very interested about this is the color of skin that is used on this woman. This I'm going to presume man, and this I'm going to presume man, because I just posted a video on color, gendered skin tone color in ancient Egypt, and it's very interesting. I haven't seen a lot with black skin, but we do see it, and you can see actually here the difference between the two shades of people, to literally just show the difference between them so that they're not overlapping. But if we look here, I'm wondering if I can find a king that I know. Well, this is Amenhotep Re, or no, Menhotep Re, which these are probably their throne names, so they won't be as recognizable to anybody. That's Menhotep Re. That's also this is Menheper-U-Re. This is Menheper-Re. This is oh, what is that? I don't know what that sign is. Oh, Amenhotep. Haha, there's one I know. This is Amenhotep. So right here is Amenhotep. So this is obviously from the Ramesside period. So I think this is literally a king list. I think this is probably lists of kings and queens, maybe. Nefer Mess something. But yeah, it's very, very interesting. Yeah, see, there she is again. This has to, I'm gonna assume this is Amos Nefertari, the one I was literally talking about. But obviously, like, her with the black skin, she would be dead. That's kind of the indication. But the guys with the sticks, I've never seen this before, and I'm gonna have to do more research about this, because why do they have sticks on their arms? I don't know. But look how great the hieroglyphs look. Like, he really tried to get these really exact so that you could literally read these. Like, and you might go into this tomb now. I wonder if I could find it. Which one is this? Festival scene, tomb of Amenmose. I just wonder if I can find it if I can find the actual wall rather than, it's so hard though to actually find. This is the difficult part. Oh, that's another painting of the same tomb. Probably also by oh, digital epigraphy. Wait, this website. Oh, okay. This is a whole other side. A whole other thing that I have to tell you. Oh, OsirisNet. Yes. Wait. If you all haven't gone to OsirisNet, OsirisNet is literally the best. They have so many images of stuff and so much layout. You can like look at the layout of the tomb. Wow, that's a wild tomb. But then you have to find what you're looking for and see if they have a photo. Nope. Sometimes it's so hard. Oh, there is the Australian Egyptological Research Centre published a book. But yeah, there's multiple pages, so that's why it's hard. Sometimes they have drawings. I promise we're not going to do this with every single image, but this image was pretty cool, so I'm going to see if I can find it. Unless you guys find this interesting, and look how cool they made this. It's so cool. But that honestly shows you like the quality. That's the quality of the wall now, pretty recently. But you have to literally add all this drawing to see. Okay, I'm so glad. Yeah, I think those sticks might be shields, but I'm not sure if they're real shields and we're just seeing them in profile, or they are actual the stick fighting. Ooh, we're gonna have to look up more stick fighting now. But yeah, I'm just trying to see if they just happen to have an image of. The other thing is that Amenmose is super common name, so we also might be looking at the total wrong dude, because that is entirely possible. Because in general, oh my god, look how horrible it is. It's such bad quality. Oh, that's the ceiling. Oh. Oh. No. Really close. But no cigar. But you can see they have full translations of it, which is really awesome. Oh, he's going through the gates? This might not be the same guy. weird feeling this is the wrong tomb. The art looks really different. Okay, beyond that. That might be the right tomb, that might be the wrong tomb, but I'm still gonna look deep into this. Where the heck is the presentation? But yeah, there's an article on Egyptian stick fighting. Sorry, I'm taking this for later. Oh, see, that's so funny. That looks almost exactly like that image. Okay, almond rose isn't mentioned in there, which is weird, but that looks almost the same. Huh. That actually makes me question if this page is right or if this page is wrong and the actual thing is. This is very interesting. Yeah, it looks like a stick strapped to their arm. But I'm just curious if it's actually supposed to be like a flat shield and you're only looking at it in profile, but it might just be like a stick that is used like a shield. But yeah, let's look at another one of his. So we have, you can see there is like vast differences. This one I love in particular because you can literally see essentially where the paint has chipped off. It's an arm protector. Oh, okay. Super cool. But you can see where, again, we're not looking at the actual images. We're looking at a painting of what the wall looked like at the time. But you can see that the paint has chipped off, but you can see the blocks. You can see the blocks of stone that were there. And he actually drew out all those little blocks. This is probably the goddess Nekbet. She's a pretty big goddess. And she's holding a shen, just kind of everlasting life. And then we got my lovely starfish stars. You can see it goes down a little bit here. And on the other side, it would also go down. And that is the symbol for the sky. And it's the symbol for Nut, the goddess. It's literally meant to be her standing with her legs, her body, and her arms. Yeah, like he really was trying to emphasize that here you can see all the different blocks of the wall and what is left of it. Yeah, Nekbet, yeah, it's in really good condition. It also makes me suspicious though that somebody might have tried to wipe things away. I don't know. So, and then we have these two beautifully detailed, probably princesses, but you can see they're in really bad condition. But he showed it. There are ones that did reconstruction, but the vast majority of them did not. They did not try to reconstruct this to be as beautiful and as perfect as it could be. But they have these beautiful, elaborate crowns, and she's holding a sistrum up to a much larger person. So that's why I presume that they're either priestesses but no, they're probably princesses because of just how fancy they're wearing, their outfits are. And then here's one more, and I love this one especially because this is very distinctly somebody that has been chopped out. For what reason, we don't know. But somebody has been carved out of this image. Whether or not this is an ancient vandalizer or a modern vandalizer, we may never know. But somebody has been chopped out of this family. Usually, this is an offering scene. So yeah, lots of food. You have loaves of bread at the bottom. You have a full goose, a full leg, vegetables like cucumbers. I don't know what the blue thing is. The head of a cow is there. More loaves of bread, a duck. A leg with, or a big like a thigh or something. This has to be some sort of fruit, I think. And then these are usually oils or jars of oils and such. But these two are the deceased people in this. Probably usually only one of them, but these two are usually the deceased person, and then this is the person who is usually giving them offerings. Blue thing's a fish? Probably. I don't know. Are you sure it's a fish? I don't think it's a fish. It would look more distinctly like a fish to me, unless it's like a weird like sea anemone. But I've seen fish that look better. But yeah, this, just by looking at this looks Old Kingdom to me. This does not really look, well, no, these are New Kingdom chairs with the legs. This might be New Kingdom. But I can actually read some of this. So this says, this is Sat F. So this is his son, Shu, Ses, the scribe, gives to the Hetep. See, this is not a, oh, here's the offering formula. I'm reading it backwards. Yeah, I think this might be a removal of the glyphs as well. Yeah, I think it might be. So this says Hetep di Nisu. Oh. This might be a different, this is not Middle Egyptian. What does that say? Where is the I don't know. I don't know how to read this. I thought I did. I was actually quite confident going into it, but not for sight reading at all. But no. Hieroglyphs are so hard. It takes you a long time. Oh, it's Rekmire. I'm dumb. I should have known this. I love Rekmire. Hieroglyphs are so hard to learn how to sight read. Offering formulas are one of the major things that you can sight read, and like names I can sight read. But sight reading is really hard. And so the other thing about it is, even though I make names in hieroglyphs, which you can hear about on my merch page, even though I make people's names in hieroglyphs and I make sentences in hieroglyphs, my professor, one major thing he always told us was never to make up your own sentences, because you would have it so wrong probably. But the whole thing, you're right, that is actually very true though. Paranoid Polaroid, that, well, unless it was a modern person, unless it's a modern destruction. But if it's an ancient destruction, he, yeah, absolutely would have had to know how to read to know that something was wrong. So yeah, this is Rekmire. Which is 18th dynasty. But I love Rekmire. So yeah, I think so. This is Rekmire, which his name is somewhere probably in here. But yeah, why does his son get removed? I don't know. No, you're right. Yeah, probably wouldn't know what to remove. But yeah, this is absolutely removal. This might be chipping off, but the way that it is so situated in between these two lines, these two, might be purposeful for sure. All right, let's look at our next person. So this is Hugh R. Hopgood. He was another artist through the Metropolitan Museum of Art's graphic section. I can find absolutely nothing about where he was born, if he died. I don't even know if he was American. I pretty much just know that he was an artist for the graphic section of the Met, and he was producing pieces around the 1910s. So it was originally founded in 1907. Remember, he's joining this group around the 1910s. And you can see there is a very distinct difference. There's a very distinct difference between his art and some other art you can see. This one is especially interesting because it's honestly, yeah, the Lotus one is amazing, but it's so unclear with this one here if this is on the wall or if these are separate pieces that he has pieced together and are painting together. Because the way that he draws it, I really cannot tell if this is still in the wall. This one is a little bit more obvious to me just because you can see this is like this banding edge that is probably there, but these pieces look completely free-floating, which is really interesting because I wouldn't know any difference. But yeah, the papyrus scene is beautiful. We got 4 different geese up here. There's, I think this looks like a spoonbill, and if you look at the very bottom, there's a little cat here, and that might be think that might be a bird that's like running in. Oh, and you can see like two little long egret kind of birds over here as well. But yeah, a tiny little kitty is down there. And then some other separately winged bird. It's interesting how all three of these are very similar in color, but then this one is very different. And there are people who have gone like super, super in detail to study animals in art and have tried to connect them with modern animals and try to distinguish them, and it's a whole big thing. Now here we have this, I can easily tell this is a procession scene, and this is typically an offering scene. These men, I believe, are not Egyptian. They are probably of some sort of other race, possibly Libyans, Sudanese, Nubians, Asiatics and stuff. But yeah, you're right. They are carrying leopard skins over their arms, and you can see pretty distinctly this one, and then this one is draped over his arm. Leopard skins were used for clothing, especially of priests. You see priests, the vast majority of time, you see a priest with a bald head and a leopard skin like slung over his shoulder. And then the other things, you got a really big feather. These are probably breads. This is probably some sort of grain. These are probably bottles full of oils or something like that. But yeah, so these are very distinctive, different style with Hugh Hopgood. Here are two more of his. Again, it's very unclear if these pieces are separate, but the really cool part about this is that this is depicting an obelisk, and you can actually see, this is a very close-in shot, because these are hieroglyphs, and you can see the hieroglyph for obelisk, and then this thing right here, I have no idea what it actually depicts, but it is actually the word for gold. Noob is how you say the word in gold in ancient Egyptian. And so whether or not this is actually saying the word gold or something associated with it, this is the glyph for gold. And then you can see here you have Nefer-Aa, which means great god. It actually might be great god Osiris, son of Ra. But yeah, so this is Menheper-Re, which is a throne name that's pretty common in the New Kingdom. Menheper-Re might be Tutankhamun's. It might even be Hatshepsut's, I think. I can't remember whose throne name that is. I think it actually might be Tutankhamun's, but I don't think this is from. There are so many other guys who have their throne name as Menheper-Re. But this says Sat Ra, son of Ra. And then I think that's another cartouche here at the bottom. But again, like he's showing these very big dimensions in the cracks. And then these are probably Egyptians. I actually think they might be going out for a hunt or something. But I love the little sandals that he's holding in his hand. I have no idea what this is supposed to be. I might look this one up because I'm curious. I'm curious what this one says. Ah, hunting. Yeah, that's what I thought. From Reign of Amenhotep II, but I don't know what tomb it is. Painted in Kurna. Fortunately, we don't know what tomb it is. Oh, there we go. No, Tomb of Khenamun. Yeah, so graphic section 1914 and 1915. So TT93 is where that is where this painting comes from. Snowboarding, yeah. It's obviously some sort of hunting gear. Maybe it's to hold a bow and arrow. I mean, this is, I think, a boomerang, which sounds weird, but yes, ancient Egyptians did have boomerangs that they would use. Oh, it's a shield. That definitely looks like it. Yeah. Alrighty, next one. Lancelot Crane. So Lancelot Crane is another artist who worked for the Met, but he was actually British. He was born in 1880, and he was trained at the Royal College of Art. You will see, unfortunately for the ones we don't have the bios, I'm not sure, but a lot of them were trained as artists prior to doing this work. So he was known to help out some of the excavations on Horemheb's tomb, who is one of the pharaohs after Tutankhamun, which this is an image of. Now, this image is heavily reconstructed. The Horemheb's tomb does not look this perfect. It looks pretty good, but it is not this perfect. This is a heavily reconstructed image. And it's to show that these artists were doing both, and they also were sketching statues as well. But yeah, this is a heavily reconstructed image of Horemheb and Anubis together. So he died only in 1918, so he would have been one of the oldest artists in the group, and was not part of this graphic section for very long. But he does have a good amount of paintings that you can see at the Met. And again, this image is very interesting because over here, this portion is unfinished. The eyes, actually, wait, I'm gonna look this up first. But I think it is actually, what I mean by unfinished is that the Egyptians unfinished it. I gotta look up, oh, wrong one. Which one is the one that I wanted? Yeah. So north wall of Nox offering chamber. But if you zoom in here, yeah, well, Lancelot Crane was one of the ones that I could find information of. I found his birthday and stuff, but I didn't find much more in detail. But no, Hugh R. Hopgood I couldn't find anything about. And some of the ones we're going to talk about next. Well, why is there a blank page? Oh no. Sorry, there are just two random blank pages in the middle of my notes. I was wondering why it felt so thick. It wasn't that long. It was not that long of a lecture. So you see this corner. The reason I can tell that the ancient Egyptians never finished this tomb, rather than Lancelot Crane himself not finishing this painting, is these lines. If you look very carefully, you can see a very distinct grid that is left on top of these people right here. And everything in here is drawn in this very light red. When you look, well, actually, looks like none of the hieroglyphs were actually even finished. So it looks like these guys were finished because you can see how Lancelot Crane went into very detail with all of the imagery of the face and stuff. But you can see that everything else is pretty lax. And all the lines are drawn, but there are no hieroglyphs. And oh yeah, you can see the grid even more down here. Essentially, I'm guessing that this tomb was never finished and that these red lines are, I know, blonde Egyptians, exactly, no one's finished the painting. The red lines are essentially the apprentice writing out the hieroglyphs on how it needs to look. And then the master would go back in black ink and make any sort of corrections. And the lines were for them to be able to draw them in all the correct proportions. And when you find unfinished tombs, you can frequently find them still with the grid on top of it or below it. But yeah, I have a feeling only the basics of these were painted, which is why none of the black, there's no black in this upper portion. Unless it's down here and you can see even more practice. But yeah, I suspect this was never finished. The grids are very cool to see. It shows you a whole different process that you don't really think about, which is really, really cool. Alrighty. Oh yeah, so one of the other things that Lancelot Crane did is he did the excavation for the tomb of Horemheb. So he also drew the coffin, the outer stone coffin of Horemheb. So yeah, so the weirdest thing about this is that the grid in ancient Egyptian art is usually a fist. So depending obviously on what's going on, but one fist was one square, and then you would have to scale it down or scale it up. but one fist was that. And there's like a distinct pattern that like there's like however many fists per a head, and then however many fists per the body, and however many fists for the legs, and then however many fists for like a crown or headpiece and stuff. So oh my goodness, how am I going to say your name? Tell me how to say your name before I absolutely like rip it to shreds. I don't know how, but hello. Alois? Welcome. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. I always try very hard to pronounce everyone's name. But welcome to the lecture. We are talking about I always started that. We are talking about Egyptologists who started their careers as artists, and we are looking at paintings/drawings of things that they made to help preserve Egyptian pieces that were in tombs that can't be removed and moved to museums. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, like it is, but the weirdest part about it, that the grid system is that it's really it's supposed to be a fist is the square, and everything is kind of based off of that, which is really weird to me. But yeah, you're right. Everything uses a modern grid as well, but the fist system seems a little interesting. But yeah, so this is one of the outer coffins of Horemheb that Lancelot Crane also sketched, which is really cool because we see some sketches of like artifacts, but not nearly as many. Thank you so much for following. Welcome. We do lectures, and then we also play video games. I'm an Egyptologist and an archaeologist, so welcome. Welcome to the lecture. Let's look at the next one. So now we have William J. Palmer Jones. So William J. Palmer Jones was a draftsman and a printmaker. He was born in Britain and educated at Dulwich College, the Architectural Association School, and the Central School of Arts and Crafts. He then worked for the Met Excavations from 1908 to 1912. He also worked as a British archaeologist in Melos and in Sparta in Greece, which is really cool. And then on the side, he also designed furniture, stage sets, and illustrated books. So based entirely off of the images that I have found that he produced and were given to the Met, I suspect that he worked on the excavations of Malkata, which is the palace complex of Amenhotep III, because these are very distinctly images from Malkata, and I know that just by looking at them. These are ceiling tiles often, or floor tiles, but you can see that he's kind of done a little reconstruction, but I love the way that he does these, though, is that you can see certain portions where it's a little bit lighter, and I suspect that these are the reconstructed portions, like this like little gap and stuff. But when you're looking at something that is so patterned and it is so repetitive, like this is stuff that I'm like, yeah, you can reconstruct that. Like that makes sense to me. And so in these instances, he is like, look, like even this, he knows there's a spiral here, but he doesn't finish the spiral because he doesn't yet quite know that the spiral is going to finish, kind of, which I think is just a very interesting way of going about it. But I think it also gives enough imagination. So like this whole portion in the corner, this is all reconstructed, but he's going off of the patterns of what is going on in the rest of them. So I suspect he was at Malkata, because I'm pretty sure these are from Malkata. And then these are other images that he produced. This one, again, you can see this kind of heavily reconstructed area. Again, it's not totally clear if any of these... Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. No, go back. Absolutely, I want a scarf of this. Or of the little cows. This was something that, honestly, the Met, I think... The Met has a very good... we'll call it high scale merchandising, where they make really fancy jewelry that is kind of based off of jewelry that you see in the museum. They make scarves. Like, you could get this as a scarf. Like I would not be surprised if they'd made something off of this, because that it's so common. And there are the Met has some really cool scarves and like patterns that they've created off of lots of different types of art. But yeah, the Met has a very good merchandising team, we'll say. And I think they do it quite respectfully, kind of. A lot of the patterns are really pretty, and I get their magazine, actually, because I ordered something from them once. Yeah, so I get their magazine. But I like the way that he does this. And it seems like he really only did this sometimes with these patterns. So, like, this area, like, okay, it is, again, unclear if all of these pieces are next to each other or if he's kind of piecing them together, which does give it a little bit. They're probably cows. They are probably cows. I'm unclear as to why these two images on the side are a little bit faded. They kind of have that faded thing of the reconstructed area, but I'm assuming that they found these semi kind of intact. But you can see the line, of course, of like the squares where he found them. Yeah. They look cows. I think they're cows because then you can see their horns, and then this would be a sun disk. So their horns kind of go around the edges of this, and then it's a sun disk. Alrighty, to the next guy. I found a photo of a person. Amazing. So this is E. Harold Jones. He was born in 1877, and he was a British artist and excavator. He also went to the Royal College of Art, and like many men, well, we'll say this, like many people of the time period, he went to Egypt the first time after contracting tuberculosis and being told by a doctor to go to a warmer climate. So it's super common for this time period for, if you were rich enough for a doctor to go, that he would recommend you go somewhere warmer. Typically it was the Mediterranean, or Egypt. Anywhere you could kind of get easy access to. Lord Carnarvon, the financier of Howard Carter's excavation, he had gotten in a car accident, and was told to go to Egypt, and that's how his entire interest in Egyptology began. So very similar to E. Harold Jones. So he didn't end up just going to Egypt for a vacation. He ended up going distinctly with an Egyptologist, John Garstang, for his excavations. So it wasn't even that. It wasn't he was literally going, I'm going to go to Egypt and recuperate from my tuberculosis. I am actually going to go to Egypt with an archaeologist and excavate with him, which honestly is better than a lot of the people. A lot of the people of this time who were going to Egypt, they weren't really doing that. So he was an illustrator and archaeologist for excavations in Beni Hassan, Abydos, Luxor, and then eventually at the Valley of the Kings in KV 54 and 55, which KV 54 is the embalming cache of Tutankhamun, and then KV 55 is potentially the tomb of Akhenaten. Yeah, these pieces are gorgeous. I'm just gonna send you far away. Yeah, I know, man. Wouldn't that be great? You have to go to Egypt to be better. So the excavations, some of the excavations that he was on, mostly the ones in the Valley of the Kings, they were actually under the American archaeologist Theodore M. Davies, who paid him £160. I have no idea if that is per year or per anything, but I found that fact about it and I thought it was very interesting. I don't think it's per painting or anything like that. But unfortunately, E. Harold Jones, going to Egypt did not cure him of his tuberculosis, and he died in 1911 when he was only 34. But he has a ton of very interesting paintings. And again, you can see the distinct style of, this one, I'm either going back and forth. This is either a fully reconstructed image, or this image is actually really, really small in person, and it was perfect when he saw it. I believe it is probably really, really small because the Egyptians would never leave so much space. around the edges. Yeah. It's kind of interesting because it kind of, at first, it was always go to somewhere where there are certain waters, like go to Bath. Like Bath has essentially mineral water locations. That was where a lot of people would get recommended to go to. And then when the Eastern world kind of opened up, then they would recommend you go to Egypt and Italy and the Greece and drier climates and such. But you can see here that, like, it's very interesting that he includes where the paint is still sticking. So he shows that these are modeled and that these are raised images, but then he shows where the paint actually is still preserved, which I really like about this kind of style. Because you can see this whole line of hieroglyphs has very little paint attached, but like you can see that there is some still stuff stuck here. What's this person's name? This person's name is Hetep S. Ib Ra. Hetep S. Ib Ra. Obviously a pharaoh, and a pharaoh of Lower and Upper Egypt, which you can see this Nisu Biti, meaning pharaoh of Upper and Lower Egypt, but I can't remember. I don't know a name like that. And then this is Ankh D, so Ankh D, D West Jed. This is like live forever. This is something that you write after king's name, so that's good. But yeah, they are so good that they could be photos. I actually might look this one up because I'm curious whose name that is. Oh, I only left one link there, so let's hope it's the right one. Amenemhet's the first. I was never gonna get that. But yeah, this must be his throne name for Amenemhet the first. But it's at the pyramid. Yeah, it's at the pyramid temple of Amenemhet the first. But yeah, you can see in really cool detail. Like I think he went very well. No, it's these are really good. These are very good images that you can get. Let's see another one. Oh, if anybody lives in England, you might know the blue system, the blue dots. These get placed on houses where historical influential people have lived. So he actually has one, and you can see it's I think it's in Wales. Because it's also in Welsh. Artist and Egyptologist. But yeah, Anubis, which this says Anpu. This is INUP, Anpu. Actually, it says the house of Anpu. I think this is he who is atop his mountain. Sorry, there's an ad. I'm gonna chug water. Okay. I can already tell my voice is going and my lips are so dry. But yeah, this says I'm pretty sure this says he was atop his mountain. I can't remember what the first one is. These are all epithets of Anubis. But yeah, Anpu. But yeah, that is E. Harold Jones. Now, you might think all of these are men, but I have found two women. One woman we're going to talk about next. We know so much about her. This poor woman, Grace A. Luther, she has a few paintings at the Met. Only one of them has an image, which is the one at the top. I have no information about her. I can find literally nothing about her, but the very interesting thing is that this facsimile that's on the top is at the Met, and the object that it is based off of is also at the Met, which is very weird because I haven't found that a lot. But I think it is so interesting because now it makes me question that, was Grace A. Luther a woman who went out on an excavation when they found this object and painted it, and then the painting and the object were both sent to the Met? Or did she paint this when this piece was already in the collection of the Met and that she worked at the Met or something? But yeah, it's very interesting. You can see that there are some definite differences in the way in the painting, mainly this, which I cannot tell if this is accurate, like if the image that she drew is accurate, or and that the Met did cut this, because I hate to say it, that line looks real straight to me. But it just like looks like they would have chopped off like a huge chunk of it. But yeah, we have two different gods. We have a vulture and we have the falcon. And these are saying cities of something. Nisu, or no, it's Swebet. Oh, and I can't remember what that one says. Something with a T at the end. But these are two cities, because this little glyph here are cities. And there's a tiny little Anubis over here. I'm going to quickly look up. This should be the one for the actual object. So it is a relief block from the Temple of Amenemhet the First. Oh, translation. It's saying, it's describing the two creatures. It says Nekbet, the one of El Kab, and Beheti, the Horus of Edfu. Yeah. Also, there's a second. Oh, they did cut it. Look at it. Oh, they did cut it. They cut it. That hurts me. Or it fell apart, but they had to have cut it. Interesting. Because that is a straight line, my friends. But yeah, very interesting. But yeah, I feel bad for Grace A. Luther. I don't know who she is, and I want to know more, but I can't find out who she is. So, I'll have to, her name will go down in history. I'll never forget this lady. So, now we're going to talk about the 4 technically, big people, the big ones. And a lot of the other ones, any of those names that I've already said, you can go and look. Actually, to be honest, if you type in facsimile Egyptian on the Met's website, pretty much all of them will come up, and you'll be able to look at tons more that all of the people I talked about before were. But there are 4 people that we're going to talk about that are, in my opinion, the largest, the most famous people who are making these facsimiles. So, the first 2 are a pair, and they're personally my favorites. So, we have Norman and Nina Daguerre's Davies. So, they are probably the most well-renowned copyists, and the wildest thing about this to me is that their names were often combined in literature, in Egyptological texts. So sometimes you don't know which one actually painted anything, because they would be known as N. Daguerre's Davies, which just makes me love them even more. So let's learn about the Daguerre's couple. So it is also very annoying, though, that they do have a combined Wikipedia page, and I hate that. Nina needs her own. So we're going to talk about Nina first, because I love Nina. So Nina Davies was actually born as Anna McPherson Cummings. She was born in Greece, but her parents were English and Scottish. She showed a lot of promise as an artist in her youth, and so her family actually moved to London so that she could go to school. When her family were actually on vacation in Alexandria in 1906, she met Norman de Gary's Davies. And they were married 1 year later and settled near Luxor. She was trying to do some math here. 19. She was 25 when she met him. He was considerably older. Norman was born in 1865, almost 20 years older than her, pretty much. And he studied actually theology at Glasgow University, and he was a minister in the I don't know how to say that word, Congregational Church at Ashton-under-Lyne when he first visited Egypt in 1897. So he actually ended up working with Flinders Petrie in Dendara, which, again, Flinders Petrie, pretty early archaeologist, and he was actually working with him at that time. He also became the head of the Egypt Exploration Fund's Archaeological Survey, and he documented tombs and was really, really good at interpreting Egyptian hieroglyphs, which is really awesome. Flinders Petrie was the one who founded the Egypt Exploration Fund. It's one of the first it's going to sound weird this way. It's a non-museum and non-university archaeological group that would send out excavations. And they did a lot of work, mostly good, but they did a lot. So right after Norman and Nina were married, they were hired by the Met to be part of the graphic section of their excavations. Norman actually headed the graphic section. So Nina was doing most of the paintings for the Met, and she, on the side, was also creating paintings for the Egyptologist Alan Gardner, which became part of many other museums' collections. Alan Gardner, if you haven't heard his name, he is one of the earliest people to write books on learning ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs. So we still use some of his books sometimes. They're a little bit outdated, but sometimes we use his books. But he was really influential in the learning of hieroglyphs. Where was I? So Nina would sign her pieces as NA.DE and then capital GD. And Norman would do the same, except it was NO.DEGD. But there were also some that were just signed NDEGD. So there are paintings that we don't know which one did them, or we think maybe they did them together when we really don't know. So between the couple, the Met has 413 different paintings from them. 157 are attributed to Nina, 59 are attributed to Norman, and 15 are attributed to both of them. The British Museum has 22 of Nina's paintings that she made for Alan Gardner, and then there are several others in smaller collections. So one of the other really cool things about the couple is they published a ton of publications about the excavations and then the art that they would create themselves. Many of these are accessible online, and you can find them. There's a whole list on their Wikipedia page, but a lot of them there's one called the Theban Tomb Series, Rock Tombs of Sheikh Said, Rock Tombs of Dir al-Gibari, Rock Tombs of Amarna, Rock Tombs of Sheikh Abed el-Kurna, and then there's a couple more that is more focused on their art pieces themselves. So Norman died in 1941 and Nina died in 1965, and they rocked it. They had so many paintings, so we are going to look at a lot of them. Obviously the one on the left is one of Norman's and the one on the right is one of Nina's. The one on the right is a relatively very famous image, and it's a very lovely image of now I'm questioning if it's Queen Ahmose Nefertari or Queen Nefertari. I think it's just Nefertari. Queen Nefertari playing Senet in her tomb. So let's look at some more paintings. Normans, I will say, tend to be a little bit more simplistic, tend to be a little bit more reconstructed. The one on this side, this one is a little sad. It's a very interesting image of women weaving with this man who is possibly very disabled. The image of this guy has kind of gone around circles of scholars trying to look at disabled people in ancient Egypt. But it's essentially weaving, and then she's actually pulling thread as well. And the glyphs are relatively simplistic, but this is from a smaller tomb. This is actually one of my favorite images because look, there's a little dog. These paintings are absolutely have been so helpful in my thesis writing and finding images of dogs, because I found that a lot of them took facsimiles of dogs. If they saw a dog that they liked, they would paint it. And so it helps a lot because if we don't have an image of the modern tomb, at least I have this painting that was painted at this time and shows that there's a dog. So this is an image of a shadoof, which we've talked about before and how much I love a shadoof. But it's a very interesting image of an ancient Egyptian house along the river side with this guy using a shadoof to grab water with a little puppy following him. But these are some of Norman's. There are some better ones. Yes, almost everything they drank was beer. The vast majority of things that everyone drank was beer, but it was definitely not as strong. Literally, the way they made beer was they took raw dough for bread and stuck it along the side of the pot and just filled it with water and then let it ferment for a little bit, but not that long, not as long as it would take for it to become like really alcoholic. Here is, I believe it's a goldsmithy, as well as like they're making like chariots and shrines, and you can see it's relatively good. It's got a good amount of the not reconstructed portions, kind of showing what the wall is looking like, and unfortunately that people are just scratching out faces and such. But yeah, it's not as precise as some of the other artists who are doing it for sure. Now let's look at Nina's, and I'm a little bit biased, but I really like Nina's. She does have a very kind of distinct style. She shows a lot of texture. You can see here there's like these tiny little circles that she's trying to show, and then she shows that when they're really, really like battered up. This beautiful depiction of a garden, which is you're looking at it from the top, essentially. The pool is in the middle and there's a little boat there, but then there are rows and rows of garden and then the building over here. And then this is another simpler version, but these guys are actually gathering water from here. I don't know what this one is, because this seems to be some sort of offering, but there is a child in this man's hands, so I don't know which one that one is supposed to be. And then we just like so beautiful. This is probably a funeral procession, because these are mourners, and there's tons of objects that they're carrying, but the hieroglyphs and everything. And she tends to show the gaps in everything a little bit very white, very stark. This is a very interesting image of a net in ancient Egypt. So you have the person here who is doing the bird hunting, and he's sitting behind this blind. Granted, he's sitting very fancy. He probably would not be sitting like that in real life. Granted, we also don't know if this person would have actually been doing any of the bird hunting themselves. But essentially, he's sitting there behind this bird blind, and there's this big net, and you can see all the different types of birds, and the colors are just really beautiful. Oh, there's a hoopoe! That's the one bird I do know that's not a goose. I believe this is a hoopoe. And it's a bird that still is in existence, and in Egypt, and it really looks just like this. I think it's called a hoopoe. But yeah, you can see absolutely beautiful images. I love these. You can also see the birds and all the fishies, and the little crocodile. A lot of these images that you see are very common that you find in a ton of different tombs. So this is I'm pretty sure this, I could probably even guess where this one is from. It's definitely New Kingdom. It might be Ramosa. But you have kind of a go back to more pre-dynastic styles, so of art. And so this shows the deceased in two different images with his wife and his children, with him hunting. And in here he's using an Egyptian version of a boomerang, but here he is spearing fish and stuff. But this image of the marsh with all of the birds and the bird's eggs nest, and there's a small little cat-like creature, and then there's this small little like mongoose possibly, tempera watercolor. Yeah, so most of these are on paper and with something called tempera, which is watercolors. There are still also drawings. What was the last event depicting setting them off? Which one? You mean this one on the boats? Or the bird nest? Yeah, so this is probably a funeral procession, just because of the mourners. Let's see if it says on their website. I'm just assuming because I know stuff. Yeah, boat with mourners. So this is for the tomb of Neferhotep. We can zoom in a little bit closer. So you would hire women to be mourners at your funerals, and what they would do is they would cry really loudly, rip their hair out, and rip their clothes off. And essentially, if you had more mourners, you were more popular. Kind of. It's not that easy. It's very interesting though. This is the exact same style of that I think is at Melkata. This swirly style. But then you can also see that there are male mourners as well. And look at these old women. Interesting. I've seen very little women with white hair being depicted in Egypt. That's very, very interesting. Tiny little children, little child on a boat with full of bread, it looks like. But yeah, this is by Nina, Tomb of Neferhotep. Let's see if I can find Tomb of Neferhotep. Oh, this is Deir al-Medina. That makes sense. Deir al-Medina is a little bit different. Oh wait, there might be more. This is Neferhotep II. Oh wait, it actually said TT49. Uh-oh. Nope, it's neither of these. Neferhotep's a really common name, apparently. TT49. I don't know if this is... Well, we have the tomb layout. TT49, but I don't have any... He was a chief scribe of Amun. Oh, here's some pictures. Oh my god, look how bad it is. So that's what it looks like. So it looks like it went through a conservation project, because you can see in, where is it? In this image. This is black soot. This is black soot that has covered the walls. And the only way that you can really get this off is with this very interesting laser thing. So it looks like it's in pretty bad condition. When was this? This was in... ...2017. Oh, it was American Research Center in Egypt. Oh, Christina Verbeek. Oh, I know Christina Verbeek. I recognize that name. I'm just curious if there are any more photos. So after the laser cleaning. So that's what it looks like after. But yeah, it's hard to find any images of... Oh look! Oh look, oh look, oh look! Ha 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 ha! Where'd it go? Where'd it go? Here we go. There it is! Ha ha! It's very hard to find, but sometimes it can. So that's what it looks like. And that's what it looks like now after it's been laser cleaned. So let me put them closer together. So you can even see, so see that tiny line here on her hand? Like, look how good that is. So the ink that would have been used on these paintings was tempera. It's called tempera watercolor. The inks that the ancient Egyptians would have been using are not much more natural. It depends on the colors and such. Oh, sorry, my back really hurts. It depends on the colors, but it would have been used with pigments, with a binder like acacia gum. So it would have been any sort of natural mineral that would have been able to make the color. Iron would have been able to make red. Egyptian blue was its own color that they had to develop with silica. Malachite does green. I'm trying to think of the ones off the top of my head. But yeah, how cool is that? That we're able to actually get that photo. And I can actually see the white-haired woman. Right down here. And these guys, I'm curious. I thought maybe that they were unfinished, but I think they are actually white. But do you see this? It's so hard to see, but the eye, the black eyelid, the pupil in these guys are barely preserved. But here she did draw them. Oh, look, and there's a little person. I'm wondering what this white hair thing is. What's the bottom left? Bottom left. Like this? This is another boat. So this is another guy with an oar. And remember that size is all about, the size of people is all about their importance. So this doesn't necessarily mean that he is this really small guy. It just means that he's not less important than these. Like, obviously these aren't giant women. These guys are just less important than the women. Though this person seems to be a child because he's naked, and that's one of the big distinctions of no. No. Some of these could be. It would really depend on the text. But the vast majority of the time is that they are decorating these tombs years before the person has died. So if this is a funerary procession for, what was his name? Neferhotep? Neferhotep's not dead. He's not dead yet. Like, the tomb has to be sealed when the person dies. These are being made years, if not decades, before they died. So the people in these depictions, unless they are specifically labeled as like the wife of something or the son or something, these are all meant to be what should happen and stuff. Well, but Charlie, this is an event that is going to happen. This is not an event that happened. There are exceptions. There are some images of events that do happen, that have happened. But this is the funeral procession of Neferhotep. Neferhotep is not dead yet when this was being made. So this is and granted, it's also very interesting this is on water. Yes, from our view that has happened. But also that doesn't necessarily mean that this is how it actually happened. Yeah, similar to that. Size does matter, Kelsey. It's absolutely does matter. At least in ancient Egyptian art it does. I'm so glad I found this. I'm gonna save this for later. And also this laser, there's tons of other images, which is really cool. But God, oh God, look how awful this is. This is about to crumble. Oh God, look at the soot. Wow. Yeah, laser cleaning is kind of the only way to get it gone. There's the laser. Clean laser. It's a backpack. Oh my God, this is like a full article. Conservation on Theban temples and tombs. Laser cleaning of the Egyptian wall paintings, the tomb of Neferhotep. It shows the distinction on which way you should be going. Up or down, side to side. Oh, and look, yeah, that's the boat. Oh, and see, look, but here you see this. This is unfinished. There's not a single glyph in these lines. They finished the painting, but they didn't finish the glyphs. So that's that. Half these tombs are unfinished because they are never prepared for when somebody's going to die. Before and after of the laser cleaning. Sorry, we're going on a whole big tangent. Before and after. Wow. That one's, and of course it goes up to the top is the worst and the ceilings are the worst because again this is from soot. Before and after. But again, this probably looks like the top edge. Yeah, this is that top edge of the ceiling. Sorry, now I'm just curious if there's more photos. Okay. Back to the slideshow. Oh, so sorry, guys. Hi, Kelsey. What's up? Depictions of physical difference in Egyptian art today, and I was able to give a halfway decent answer. Thank you. Yes, we were talking about dwarfism in ancient Egyptian art, and I'm doing a Patreon course in October all about like the standards of Egyptian art and stuff like that, and so that's gonna be part of it with all the hierarchic scale and how certain people are more important. Like, I mean, in this guy is enormous against this guy, but that's not how really it is. It's just this guy is the guy who died in the tomb, and this is his lowly servant that probably isn't even named. Again, but probably not even his real servant. If it was a real servant that this person actually did know and talk to, then he would have been named. Which happens, and you see them, and then you're like, is this actually a person you would have known? Or, I don't know. And sometimes there are. And a lot of, like, lower underlings, they would show depictions of the pharaoh, or they would drop the pharaoh's name because they're friends with them, so that also would happen. Here's another, oh wait, did we already look at this one? I don't know why. I guess we already looked at this one. Did I say this was somebody else's? Sorry, we're scrolling back. No, I guess we just already looked at that one. I don't remember when we looked at that one, or if I had skipped ahead. Oh no, we went back. We went back to this image. Never mind. Okay. Yeah, we've already looked at this one. Anything else I want to say about Nina and Norman? Thank you. Yeah, and that's kind of my big thing, is that some dogs are named and some dogs aren't, and so there's a whole big thing. No, there aren't actually ancient Egyptian giants. Absolutely not. Kelsey, don't drop that. Don't drop that out in the ether for people to go. Yes. Kelsey, you need to come and do a lecture about bears. I have a couple bears. There's a couple bears being brought as offerings. But yeah, there are some bears. We got to do a whole. If you guys didn't know, Kelsey was one of our guest lecturers a couple months ago, and Kelsey studies Mesopotamian art. We're talking on TikTok Live right now. And we did a lecture where she showed ancient Egyptian or ancient Mesopotamian dogs, and I showed ancient Egyptian dogs. And so I think we're going to do a bears. Yeah, I'll find you some bears. I need to write that on a post-it notes that I remember. I don't have any more post-it notes. And hopefully I'll remember what this means when I write send Kelsey bears. You might have access to a book. I might send you a reference. There's this huge book that this Australian woman wrote all about animals. You probably have access to it at your university, and I'll find what it is. I'll find what the name of it is, and you probably can find it in your library up there. Yeah, see, it's always Syrian bears. That's what it is. I was trying to think of it. It was all something. But yeah, it's always Syrian bears. Backyard scientist lasers? No. That terrifies me a little bit. Actual ending of the plot of the Da Vinci Code, like the book I read. There are tombs of Nephilims, what? Or something mentioned in the Bible that were actual aliens. Oh, God. What's up, Slayer Darth? Testing. Are you having problems with stream? I will find that for you, Kelsey. Who was the author I was mentioning earlier? Which one? I don't... What was the... Nephilims? I had to Google it. That's weird. Yeah. Go for it. Why are dogs absolutely barking like crazy? I'm gonna try to look up ancient Egyptian animal book. I'm trying to remember what the book's name was. Is it this one? There is this one, Kelsey, The Mammals of Ancient Egypt by Dale Osborne and Jana... No, I can't say that last name. Osbornova. That's not the one I'm thinking of, but that one I did use a lot. And The Animal World of the Pharaohs, but that's a little bit of a coffee table book. I am thinking of... It's like... I literally can picture the cover of it. But I can't think of what. If I type in Australia, is it gonna pop up? No. I wish it would. I know it's by an Australian author. If not by... I'll find it later. I can't... my memory is not good enough to remember what author I was talking about. About what? I said Nina and Norman DeGary's Davies published a lot of books. Kelsey, this is gonna annoy me because I really want to find it for you now. You know what, guys? I'm just gonna take a brief break. We're just gonna go to Just Chatting while I look for this because I know it's on the tip of my tongue because I talk about her so much. And I know I took some really illegal photos of the book, and I have it here on my computer somewhere. Oh, actually, okay. This is the whole thing. If you get access, if you join as Patreon, you will get access to some resources that I'm looking through my giant pile of folders. Okay, so it's in Egyptology. It is in... I have a whole folder about animals somewhere. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. Art history, animals. There we go. Evans. It's called Animal Behaviors in Ancient Egypt. Animal Behaviors in Ancient Egypt is the most wild book. It is a chunky book, but it's by Evans, and it's called Animal Behaviors in Ancient Egypt. And it's published by the Australian Centre for Egyptology. It's what's her actual name? I can't see it. Linda Evans. Animal behavior in Egyptian art, representations of the natural world in Memphite tomb scenes. It is the most ridiculous book. It is so chunky, but I have only select pages about dogs, but I have some images if you want some of them. There's also, I have so many. Kelsey, message me your email and I can just email you this whole chunky this whole thing for you. Because some of them are a little bit general. Most of them are. Oh, I'm not going to send you the hyena ones. You do not need to read the hyena articles. They're so annoying. Which I think I talked about when we did that lecture, but if you really wanted to read the hyena articles. I told it before there are two authors who one wrote an article and then another one wrote a rebuttal and then the other person wrote another rebuttal back about if hyenas were delicacies in ancient Egypt and about the force feeding of hyenas. And the first person says it is the images are forced feeding because it's like a hyena on its back and there's a human like with his hand in the hyena's mouth with this weird like with this weird lump like in the hyena's mouth, and so they think that they were force feeding it, which the only reason you would need to force feed a hyena is if you were going to eat it, and that it would be some sort of delicacy. And then the other author came back as a rebuttal and was like, no, actually that's the hyena's tongue and they are slaughtering, like they're doing something else to it. And then the other person came back and was like, no, you're wrong. And I was like, I've never had to read so many articles about hyenas, and I only included it in literally a footnote in like the very beginning of my thesis when I had to talk about the difference between imagery of dogs, hyenas, wolves, and jackals. I don't know how that happened. All right, we are down to our last two artists. The next one is quite recognizable. It's actually Howard Carter himself. Animal Behaviors in Egyptian Art by Linda Evans. Yes, it is a very difficult book to find. I'm only really suggesting it to Kelsey because I know she has a university with a pretty good Egyptology collection. Otherwise, you might be able to ILL it or interlibrary loan, but it's unfortunately a difficult book to find. I love the Australian Centre for Egyptology. They publish such good books, but they are really hard to find because they're only in Australia, probably. But yeah, we love uber specific scholarly articles of people just like straight up arguing. So one of the Egyptologists, who is arguably the most famous Egyptologist probably in the whole world, he went to Egypt originally as an artist, and you can see an image over here of I think it says at the bottom it says drawing of King Tut as I knew him, Howard Carter, and it's signed Howard Carter. And this is how he draws. I do not eat hyena. No, I do not. They are actually, hyenas are totally terrifying. In ancient Egyptian art, they look like nice and cuddly, although they are huge in comparison to humans, which they aren't really that huge, but yeah. Hyenas are a no for me. So, Howard Carter was born in, I gotta drink. But yeah, Kelsey, let me know. Let me know what you want. If you want general, if you want specific, I can give you all the crap I have on animals. Because I had to include a good amount of it in the beginning of my thesis. At the least I'll have good images that you can look up later. Add back. Add is done. Yeah, you do. I knew you would have it. Like, my university had it, and that's the only reason that I was able to take a lot of, I essentially went in, I looked up every index for dog and just took a photo of the picture and then read it at home because we did have it in our library, but I was like, Michigan is gonna have everything. I know it is. You guys probably have a great library. I'll have to come and visit it someday. But yeah, it's definitely too detailed. Don't get all bogged down by it's all about animal behavior, so it's all about animals like in different positions. Just go for the photos, to be honest. We got that good football money. Yeah, my school did not have the good football money. We had all of the professors died and left their collections to the university, and so we had our little petite little Egyptology library, and then ILL. Oh, well, that's good. Then Linda Evans has got you good. Um, hyenas were the only animal with not within the canine genus that I had to talk about because a lot of people think hyenas are dogs in the imagery itself. I love this piece. I love unfinished art like this. That's very good, Kelsey. I like that. That's a good idea. With the prevalence of depictions of dwarf in ancient Egypt, is it possible to have a person with dwarfism as a dog handler? Possibly. Yeah. That is definitely possible. That was the kind of difficult thing with my dog thesis, was that I was trying to determine whether or not, like, I never really got the opportunity to do this because essentially my dog thesis more became about collecting all of the images and looking at them very widely. But I very much could have kind of gone a much more theory route, which I hate. So I'm glad I did not do that. But one of the big theories would have been, are the dogs that are being depicted in the tomb, are they real dogs? Are they a real pet or personal animal of the deceased person? And I argued that any dog with a name, the likelihood of them being a real dog was higher. But you're right. It could have just been any dog underneath the chair of somebody could have just been a symbol of power, could have been a symbol of strength, that you're a good hunter, that like you're loyal, like you're a companion. And then maybe the person with dwarfism who's holding the dog underneath the chair shows, I'm wealthy enough to have to hire a dog caretaker. Entirely possible. But people with dwarfism had a ton of different jobs in Egypt, so it's not just that. But you're right. The likelihood that the people with dwarfism that are depicted in tombs that are not the tombs of a person with dwarfism might just be filler, might just be some sort of power image. It's how the Egyptians worked. Every piece of art, everything that they put up there is put up there for a reason. It's really not depicting real life in most. Like, it is, but the reason they select certain scenes are because they're trying to portray something, trying to say something. I hate theory, Kelsey. It goes right over my freaking head. I know you love theory. You crave theory, and some theory I can catch up on. Like, I can be like, oh yeah, like the symbol, like if we're talking symbolism and art, kind of, like I can get it. But when you're going like really deep down into it, essentially my mind just keeps pushing me out and saying, but how do we know that's real? And then I kind of just am like, I can't deal with the crave is a strong word. Bumping off the professors for the endowment money. Oh god, I don't even think we had an endowment. They're just old. At this point, Egyptology is about waiting for somebody to die. And I'm sure that's with a lot of other similar semiotics. Yeah. Yeah, I do. Good murder mystery show. No, you're just waiting for someone to die so you can take their place. But it is always, I mean, that's how it was half the time, is that you also had to try to find somebody, a mentor, who you then could get their whole book collection from you. Where was I? We'll just start again with Howard Carter. We only got 2 more guys, and I'm getting tired, but we're going to power through. So Howard Carter was born in 1874, and he had many artistic talents when he was really young. He first got interested in Egypt when he moved to live near Diglington Hall, which had contained a large collection of Egyptian artifacts. So the Lady Amherst, who lived there, was really impressed with his artistic skills. So she actually convinced the Egypt Exploration Fund, which again was Flinders Petrie's like company essentially, to send Carter to excavate with her family friend Percy Newberry. Percy Newberry, really big archaeologist, has some really also pretty good books. Thank you, Kelsey. Yes, I would love to. I'll send you all the animal things. So this is just wild to me because again it just shows that like these early Egyptologists had to have money and they had to have influence and they usually had to know somebody who knows somebody. So Lady Amherst was able to get him connected with Percy Newberry, and at 17 Howard Carter was off to Egypt, and he did a lot of copying skills, to copy different images from tombs in Beni Hassan, and then later he actually continued on and did excavations with Flinders Petrie in Amarna and Edward Neville in Deir al-Bahri, which is Hatshepsut's mortuary temple. He would do a little bit of the excavation in this, but he was mainly hired as an artist. Do I have images? Yeah, so here are some images of I believe I think Hatshepsut's in the middle, and I think the other two are Amos, who is Hatshepsut's mother, I think. At least the one on the left, I think, is Amos. But you can see the dates. These are 1896, 18... That's probably 1899. But we have these images of essentially pieces from Deir al-Bahri and Hatshepsut's mortuary temple. You can tell the style is very, very artistic. It definitely, with like this giant crack, it definitely is pretty accurate. Like it's showing the mistakes, but then it's very much like the way that it's shaded and whitewashed and stuff. It's more flowy. It's not as like we're trying to become an exact copy of this. But these are some of Howard Carter's pieces. So later, obviously, Howard Carter was appointed inspector of the monuments, though he was fired at one point, if you didn't know that, and then he, unfortunately, at that time, he had to resort to painting and selling images for tourists. So these are potentially some of the images that he would have sold to tourists, because again, they're not really scientific. They're not on the scientific side of like recording these sites and making sure that these sites are accurate. Like this is essentially just these landscapes, kind of very similar to the early Egyptologists from the Napoleonic campaign, who are just kind of drawing these larger landscapes. But you can see this is Deir al-Bahri. This is fairly accurate. It's kind of showing the excavations, but yes, very much a tourist memento. So these would have been some of the paintings that he was creating kind of in this middle of his career before he was hired by Lord Carnarvon to excavate the Valley of the Kings. So he eventually yeah, exactly. Very much he would apparently kind of hold up shop near the temples and he would sell some of these paintings. I would be desperate to own one of these, but I have seen them go for thousands of dollars. A lot of these paintings you can find on auction websites now. You don't find these at museums a lot. A lot of these are at auction sites, because he wasn't part of this Met graphic section. He wasn't creating these for museum quality. He was kind of just making these not for fun, but he was yeah, kind of postcard painters, something kind of like that. I'm not sure how large these are. These were probably slightly larger than postcards. But yeah, only in the very beginning when he was doing kind of these things, he was painting because he was hired by an excavation. But again, a little bit more artistic side and stuff. But yeah, they're still lovely. But it's on the less of the scientific side. He was much more scientific when it came to archaeology than he did with this kind of Egyptological painting style. But yeah, I think that his art is very underappreciated. We obviously always talk about Howard Carter as an archaeologist and as a scientist in this kind of way, but I don't think we respect his artistic talents that much. These are actually some that are on that were sold. I believe they're Hatshepsut. They were actually sold on, or they were appraised on the Antiques Roadshow, and I wrote down the price for $30,000 to $50,000. How much these three got appraised for? But yeah, again, like, not really given to museums. Like, they're not really. These are much more on the market than a lot of the other paintings that we talked about before that weren't really sold, or they were sold directly to the museums rather than like sold from the artist to the museums, which we're going to talk about with the next guy. Sorry, there was a weird noise outside. So our last person we're going to talk about today is my favorite. I'm very biased, but this is my favorite guy. His name is Joseph Linden Smith. The reason I got into this subject was because of Joseph Linden Smith. We had 3 of his paintings at my graduate university. 2 of them were outside of the gallery, kind of in the main hall, and those are unfortunately, that's one of the objects I talked about at the very beginning. Why this lecture is titled "Is That a Beehive?" Is because one of his paintings that is in the University of Memphis Art Museum has a beehive painted into it. Unfortunately, I don't have a photo of it. That is Giza. I think he's painting it from the direction where Menkare's pyramid is either outside the limits of that painting or it's hidden. I think he's looking at it from the north. He's in the north and he's looking south, and so I think it's hiding because they're kind of at an angle. So you got Pyramid of Khufu, Khafre, and Menkare, I think, is hidden behind that one, the angle that he's looking at, I believe. I'm not sure, but I don't think he would have left it out if he's sitting there. I'm assuming that one is him literally sitting there and looking at it. Excuse me while I take some Tums. So, but yeah, I have a little bias. I love Joseph Linden Smith. I think he's a very interesting person. There is a free, like, really in-depth bio of him. It might even be an autobiography of him if you look it up online. He was an American painter. He was born in... Whoa, excuse me. Choking on Tums. I'm okay, I promise. So he was an American painter born in 1863 in Rhode Island. He was really interested in studying art, so he actually studied at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston because they actually created a school called the Art School at the MFA in Boston. So he joined that school when he was younger, and then he ended up studying at the Académie Julienne in Paris, and then traveling around Greece and Italy and painting. The image on the left is actually a painting by F.W. Benson of Joseph Linden Smith when he was younger, which I think is just lovely. I would really love to have like a whole group of artist friends so that you can be like the subject of like the art pieces, which is really cool. In 1899, he married Corinna Haven Putnam, and for decades they would live their winters in Latin America or in Egypt and their summers in New Hampshire. So I think Lydia Putnam is in that photo at the bottom, but it's actually Joseph Linden Smith. He's the man on the left sitting, and this is actually George Reisner, who was a really famous Egyptologist who worked for the MFA in Boston and excavated at Giza. So Joseph Linden Smith's involvement in Egypt and Egyptian history and art started in 1898, the year before he got married, when he literally just like went to Egypt on a whim because he obviously had the funds to do so when he was living abroad. So while he was there, he was painting a lot, and it was, again, not the scientific painting, but the of copying, but the kind of touristy painting of painting like scenes, and he was painting images of the Nile, and some smaller antiquities. And it actually caught the eye of Phoebe Hearst and George Andrew Reisner. So Phoebe Hearst is a very interesting woman. She pretty much was just a rich person who really was interested in ancient Egypt. But essentially, there is now a museum at, I believe it's University of, I want to say it's University of Berkeley, but I feel like it's just a University of California. And I just can't remember. But it's called the Phoebe Hearst Museum, and it has a pretty good Egyptological collection, and also did a good amount of excavations via her. But I believe many of it is probably just her collection. And George Andrew Reisner, again, was an American Egyptologist who worked for the MFA in Boston. So Phoebe Hearst at the time, she was underwriting for the excavation, so she did a little bit of like going to Egypt, but like not really doing any of the excavating. So she was, so it is the University of California. So she was underwriting for the excavations in Giza for the University of California. And at the time, Reisner was the director of excavations, working with both Harvard and the MFA in Boston. And they both hired Smith to make these wall paintings. So this is pre the graphic section of the Met. So Joseph Linden Smith would pretty much be one of the first people to be making these copyist paintings. He also kept a very detailed diary of whenever he was in Egypt, and there is a memoir that was published after his death in 1950 about his art and his travels. Smith was often one of the first people to enter these newly discovered tombs, and he knew a ton of these huge Egyptological names within the field at this time. So the Joseph Linden Smith paintings are at the Harvard Museums, the MFA in Boston, the Isabel Stewart Gardner Museum, the Fitchburg Art Museum, and it's not mentioned on his Wikipedia, but the Art Museum of the University of Memphis. That is because those three paintings that are at the Art Museum of the University of Memphis are actually paintings that were purchased from the MFA in Boston. So they all came from Boston. I especially love these two photos of him because we have so little photos or any knowledge on how they were actually copying. But we just have this like huge, like it's so cool to me to just see this process and to see these paintings with the actual thing that he is creating. This photo is probably one of my favorites because you can just see how closely it looks like it. So let's look at some of his paintings. He did again do some of these larger scale, accurate, but a little bit, to me, on the more artsy side versus the scientific side. This, if you can believe it, is a painting. It does not look like it, and I can pull this up later. I believe this is at the Cincinnati Art Museum. This is not a drawing. This is a painting. I truly think Joseph Linden Smith is probably one of the best artists we have. Because it is really, really hard to understand that this is a painting and not a photograph of the actual tomb. This is probably one of the best pieces I've seen that is just like so ridiculously accurate, because I hate to say it, all of these streaks, it's probably bird poop. Like it's probably like bird poop or rain or something. I might try to pull this up bigger. I think it's at Cincinnati. Thank you so much, Billy Up. Welcome to the stream. That's it. Cincinnati Art Galleries. $18,000 is apparently what they sold this for. But yeah. It's truly remarkable how much this looks like a photo. How are you, Billy Up? welcome to the stream. We are kind of finishing up with a lecture coming up soon. We're just looking at some of the last little images, but feel free if you have any questions about ancient Egypt or anything, drop them in the chat. But yeah, we're looking at images from Joseph Lyndon Smith, who was an Egyptologist slash artist, who, well, actually, no, he's really just an artist. He didn't really do anything about Egyptology. He was part of the group. He lived in a place in New Hampshire called Dublin, and he's actually part of this Dublin Art Society, with like all of these wild like artists, but like he kind of lived in this area, and like he did other art. Like there's plenty of other non-Egyptology things that he did, but this was probably how he made a lot of his money. Yeah, on the right, yeah, this piece looks really good. I think this is just a bad quality of the photo, but these are some of the best. So this is interesting because these are statues. This is a very famous statue of Akhenaten. And then this one, I'm actually going to look up, we're going to look up the photo of this actual statue. And then this is a wall painting of two women. Whoop, sorry. But let me look up that one. This is another really good one. Like, oh, it's just like so good. I just can't remember what this guy's name is. There's a really pretty good article about him and his wife as well. And by American Research Center in Egypt. No, you told me what type. What? I know this said the type, the statue's name, and now I can't remember what the statue's name is. It's a really famous statue too, and I'm mad I can't remember the name of it. No way! Joseph Lyndon Smith drew some of my dogs. Sold at auction. How much did they sell this for? I would have bought this. $2,000 to $4,000. I want a Joseph Lyndon. Yeah, it's Mararuka. I should have known it was Mararuka. Oh wow. So this is, no, where'd it go? So this is a painting of Ankaf. And you can kind of see the actual like paint of it. But then this is Ankaf. This is the statue of Ankaf. It looks so good. That's probably what they did. Maybe not internal, external ramps. I've never really seen internal ramps. But yeah, there are other paintings that he did. His wife was one of his subjects as well. And he did some really cool, interesting paintings. There's a really interesting one he did of Asia. He did a few beautiful little Chinese paintings, and then this is Persepolis ruins, which I love. It's another great one. I can't remember the name of the statue in the middle, but one of my other favorite ones is this. He didn't do too many of these, and we don't have very many images like this, but this is literally a tomb, and this is essentially the tomb as it was found, and I believe we actually have photos of this one, so I'm actually going to go look up what the photos. I need to remember again what this tomb, the name of it is. This literally, I looked at this article the other day and it told me what tomb this was from. I could have sworn it did. Dang it. I thought it told me what tomb that was. It's really weird. I could have actually really sworn that that article... Oh, wait. No. I found... No, I remember now. Here it is. Here it is. I forgot. I was looking at... I was looking up all of his paintings at the MFA in Boston. Sorry, go to 1. Okay. Sorry, that's what I was doing. I was looking up his paintings at the MFA in Boston. Which at first when you type it in, there's some weird ones that might not be him. But then you start to see the ones that are. There's another dog. And you can see obviously some of them have not been have not been photographed, although they are pretty detailed. Here it is. So this is the tomb chamber of Queen Hetepheres. Oh, there it is. Oh my god, the photo's right there. Wait. Look. Ah, come on. That's the photo I want. Where'd the photo go? That is what the tomb looked like. And where'd the... His painting and the photograph. His painting, the photograph. It's obviously a little bit artistic, but like, come on. There's probably not that very many photos of the actual tomb, because we're talking about, when was this excavated? 19... No. When was the tomb excavated? 1925. Like, this is really good. And this is a queen's tomb. If I remember correctly, all of this is supposed to be... Yeah, this is one of the best tombs of the Old Kingdom that has ever been preserved, even though this is a secondary burial. But this is the armchair that was reconstructed, the bed that was reconstructed. Here it is. And the canopy. Why is that in such bad quality? There's a canopy. All of those poles that are sitting on top of the... All of the poles that are sitting on top of... Here. There we go. All the poles that are sitting on top of that coffin made up this huge canopy area. She's really cool. I really like Queen Hetepheres. She's got some also really cool jewelry as well. And a carrying chair. She's got a lot of stuff. And it's a secondary burial, which is like amazing that it still is so well preserved. But yeah, not that many old photos of it. But yeah. Sorry, I keep losing my slideshow. But yeah, so we don't have a lot of them like this, but Joseph Linden Smith had a couple. Now, this is the painting that I knew I started knowing him from, because I did a whole presentation on whether or not copies are art themselves, jumping into a little bit of theory. But this is from the tomb of Ramosa. It is, again, a funeral scene with a huge group of mourners on one side and then a group of attendants who are bringing different items that would have been going into Ramosa's tomb. You see, you got the bed, you got the headrest, you got the fan, you got the chair, little bag of something, lots of chests probably full of jewelry, ointments, makeup. You got another chair, you got a scribal palette, you got sandals, jars of liquids and such. And then this is also a really good example of the color theory, where all of these men have different shades, and even these guys have different shades. It's the every other guy has a different shade. And this guy actually is bald, which is interesting. But every other guy has a different color skin tone so that they stand out against each other, especially these four that are in that group. These women mostly have the same skin tone, but you can also see the difference in heights, and then the difference in that this one very distinctly is a child. But you can also see that the tomb was not complete. There's a whole huge gap in the corner of text that had never been written. And this is the actual painting. And Tomb of Ramosa is weird because it has two very distinct styles. Oh my god. I just want to look at the image. So here's that image. Although it's kind of, it cuts off here. So there's the painting. And there's one half of the image. Yeah, he did. Yeah, they got a lot of the hieroglyphs done. The weird thing I'll show you about the Tomb of Ramosa. So there's our ladies. Here's an image of the ladies and the child. No, this does not show the weird parts about the Tomb of Ramosa. The weird part about the Tomb of Ramosa is there's two very, very distinct styles. That is a fake. That's not real. I'm sorry. That's not a real, that's a copy. Okay, it does say it's a copy. That's a copy. That's not real. I can tell that a mile away. Why is that their Wikipedia photo when you can get this one? So this is the Tomb of Ramosa. You can see here, this is the only portion that was finished. And the portion of the section that we're talking about was one of the only portions that was finished. Everything else here was unpainted. It was carved, unpainted though. Only this part. And this is also, Ramosa lived during a time in between Amenhotep III and Akhenaten. So this style is definitely very different. The way that this is all kind of raised relief versus all painted, it's very different. The tomb is a pretty unique one, and it is one you can actually go and visit. I was gonna say there might be a 3D tour. Here's his tomb. His tomb is massive. Oh yeah, look at that. There we go. So there are our ladies, and if you look very closely, you can actually see tears in their eyes. See the tears? But yeah, here are the ladies and the little baby. Oh wow, even closer. And here's that whole section. So the section that Joseph Linden Smith painted is from here to here. But yeah, they got a lot done in this section, but everywhere else it is relatively stark and empty. This is the burial chamber. Ooh, look, a skull! Sorry, I didn't know there was a picture of a skull in there. You can actually see he actually did a lot of images. So here is his version of the Tomb of Ramosa. He did a lot of images from Ramosa that I can tell. This is another one, another group of mourners. These ladies are very interesting with their color. They're very interesting colored clothing. They must be priestesses or something. I also like this one though. So this is, ooh, is this MelissainDeNile? Ah, sometimes I know all the tombs that I can tell. This is the tomb of MelissainDeNile III. She was a queen in the Old Kingdom. And this is a really lovely painting, but also pretty scientific. Shows us the color of all these glyphs up here and the images of MelissainDeNile. And he did a lot in this tomb as well, which was excavated by Reisner, I'm pretty sure. But that is technically it. I really love Joseph Linden Smith. I could talk about him forever. There's another one. There's the entrance of the tomb. If you watch my TikTok, I talked about this image of the queen with the pointy shoulders. I need a whole video about her. She's very cool. Yeah, see, frontal view of bust of Ankh. Oh, here she is. The pointy shoulders. Don't ask me what they are. They're just her weird outfit, man. With a little tiny kid. Yeah, so this is Hetepheres II, but this is in Queen Melissainc III's tomb, which is her mother. It's very late. It's very weird. And then the short wig, which is only like during this really short time period in Old Kingdom. Oh, Tomb of Kar. But yeah, then he does something like this. Just the view of the second cataract. Just this beautiful, beautiful painting in temples like this. Very, almost non-impressionistic, like, yeah, very, very 80s, absolutely. It's very unique. You don't see a lot of images of her like that. Oh, look, a hyena. Or a fox, but I think that's a hyena. He's pushing him along. Or Khufu Khaf. Oh yeah, here it is again. There's not very many images of this outfit, but Khufu Khaf is one of the sons of Pharaoh Khufu and his mother. Yeah, so one of the queens. There's Hetepheres again and Melissainc riding in a boat together. There's lots of it. Like, I feel like Joseph Linden Smith has probably the most wide-ranging of time periods that he looked at. I love his art. I could just look at these all day. Oh, Mararuka, yeah. And this is so interesting. So this block was totally taken. Somebody totally took this block out. So he had to draw the fake one that's in there now. Leading sacrifices. Like, a lot of these names of these tombs are like really big ones. Kagmeni, that's another huge one. With tons, but he does very distinctly like kind of small sections, but then he'll just do like a big thing like this, and then he'll look at like the way he's Mararuka. Mararuka is another really cool person to talk about. Like, look at this huge hunting and swamp scenes. Oh, look, another dog. Do I have this? Oh yeah, it's Ptahhotep. I am so impressed by my memory that I can remember if I have that dog listed in my thing. But yeah, I have this dog. There's two dogs here, and it looks like, I think there's a tiny little puppy here, and there's another dog here, and two dogs ripping this animal to shreds, and then animals fucking for no reason. Oh, here! People who are interested in dwarfism. Here's two, this is a very famous image as well. These are two people with dwarfism making gold. They're goldsmiths. And actually these guys might be people with dwarfism as well. But you can see the very distinctive difference between these two people. And it's not the same size. So like, you see these guys, these guys are in different sizes, but they are at the same proportion. These guys are pretty much at the same size, but different proportion. You can see how small their legs are in comparison. But then you can also see how different these two people are from each other. But that's a very famous image of people with dwarfism. There he is. Ranofer. But yeah, here's Ranofer is very interesting because Ranofer has had two different statues of himself. This one as he's like this older like man with like the short cropped hair, and this one when he's this younger and he's wearing like the tiny kilt. And so he has two different statues of Ranofar, which is cool. Oh, here's Kagmeni. There's another dog. And here's another person with dwarfism walking the dog and the monkey. But like look at the scale. How wild the scale is with Kagmeni and all the people holding him in his carrying chair. That's usually you don't see something at that height, but sometimes you do. Not very often though. So then he gets a New Kingdom. He doesn't do a lot of New Kingdom stuff, but this is a very famous image of Seti the First, and his offering table, or his offering Maat, offering peace. So, does anybody have any other questions? Because otherwise, I am literally exhausted. This is Mararuka again. Children doing games. You can tell because they're all naked and they all have the side ponytail, side lock. So they're all playing games or doing something else, but they're all children at the least. But yeah, like then you can see, oh no, this is not him. Oh no, this is him. Interesting. See, like totally different style. Venice. It's called the Critics. Interesting. And then this one I like too. This is an image of a sarcophagus that he painted. Something called the Sarcophagus of Alexander, from Sidon. And so he painted the carving and possibly what color was on there, but I'm not sure how accurate that is because most of those sarcophagi are not colored anymore. Alrighty, y'all. Woo. I hope y'all enjoyed that. It was not as much research as I thought it was going to be, but there was a lot of information and I had to go through a lot of different stuff. Hi, T-Tem Cat. What do they call the original artists that drew hieroglyphs on the tomb walls? So they would be scribes or they would be artists. I actually don't know what. I'm gonna look in my dictionary to see if there's actually a word for artist. Usually it's like draftsman or something. Let me look and see if there's a word for art. Granted, this is just Middle Egyptian, but I don't think there is a name for. It would probably be something along the word for scribe. Where's the word for scribe? So, here, I'll show you guys. So, you see here, here's the word for scribe, which is sesh. And you can see that if you add a couple other letters to it, you can call it painter or draftsman, which would be somebody who was drafting everything in there. But yeah, you would, no matter what, if you're drawing the hieroglyphs on the wall, you have to probably be skilled as a scribe. So no matter what, you're probably going to have a title for scribe. You might have something extra as well. Oh, thank you, Charlie, for the Mummy Love sticker. Matthew, you gotta remind me what a shadit is. But yeah, scribe is the typical one. Again, if you add some extra letters. Sometimes you'll see painter. I wonder if there's another word for painter. No, it's the only one they have in there. But yeah, I was spelling draftsman wrong, so it's draughts. So yeah, so this word kedut is used for the word drawings, but if you add sesh, if you add the word for scribe, then you are a scribe of drawing, meaning that you are a draftsman. You are somebody who is doing that. And apparently there's another word, iba, apparently can be used. But yeah, that's a very good question. But yeah, most of the time you got to be skilled as a scribe to do that.